What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? Welcome to the Monday show, everybody. Good to see you. Hopefully everybody had good weekends out there. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers. I'm sure we got a lot of moms tuning in. There's probably at least one out there anyway. Mine. What's up, Mom? We had a fun Mother's Day barbecue at the house. Got to see my niece hang out, cause a lot of trouble, wreak some havoc on the house. It was a fun time. Excellent shish kebab. I actually just grabbed a little piece of cold steak out of my leftovers just to tide me over until the show's over. But hopefully all you guys had good weekends, doing whatever you were doing, hanging out with your moms or otherwise. Rough weekend of sports for the New York playoff teams. Knicks dropped a really bad one yesterday. Rangers dropped game 4, but they're still up 3-1 coming home. I like them to put that one away. Stephen B's here. What's up, Stephen? Andy Melman. What's going on, you guys? Looks like a pretty good slate. We got a 12-gamer, a lot to talk about. Just dropped an update for the hitting projections. We got the Red Sox and the Mets lineup, so I just threw those up there a minute ago. Had a pitching change during the day. I was really annoyed. Started the day with Yoshinobu Yamamoto in for the Dodgers as the starting pitcher. That was what Labs had and a couple other spots had. And I was like, all right, that's usually where I just, grab them from. And then I noticed that Gavin Stone was projected somewhere, and then I jumped over to the MLB probable starters page as a tiebreak, and they had Gavin Stone. So I switched it, and I projected everything with Gavin Stone, and then I went back in and changed over to Yoshinobu Yamamoto. So I updated all of that stuff. I also updated the stacks, the power rankings, all the tools and projections for that pitching change, because that's an important one. He's the top-ranked pitcher on the day. Cujo's here, Stephen B, Fanatic, Jake Swales. What's going on, guys? Just killing a little bit of time to start the show. Waiting for all you guys to get in the room. Been briefly looking over. There's a great article up on Fangraphs, and there's another one up on Savant, Baseball Savant, that goes through the new StatCast numbers that came out. And it looks like really interesting data that I might throw into the board here. A lot of it just kind of informs what we always talk about with the premium contact numbers, barrel rate, hard hit, but it looks a little bit more specific and really interesting. They've got a squared up rate in there that I'm really curious about. And I'm glancing at the article, and I'm going to summarize it, and I'm going to show you guys the leaderboard to start the show. So StatCast considers a ball squared up, and thanks to Fangraphs, Ben Clemens over at Fangraphs, just directly reading out of his article. StatCast considers a ball squared up if its actual exit velocity is at least 80% of its maximum theoretical exit velocity. In other words, it measures whether you caught the ball flush. And the idea is the batter doesn't have any kind of control over what velocity the pitch comes in at. They control the contact that they make, the speed with which they swing, and via the math, there's a maximum theoretical exit velocity for every pitch based on those different factors. So StatCast has piled up some data, and they're trying to measure that with squared up rate, which is really cool. And it really illustrates like guys like Luis Arraez, Stephen Kwan, who are frequent contact guys who square the ball up a lot, but they do it with slow swings. And then he goes on in this article and he talks about Juan Soto, who's just completely absurd. He's an outlier because he does that. He squares the ball up as frequently as those type of guys while having one of the fastest swing rates in the league. So it also measures swing speed, which is really interesting. It gets into fast swing rate, how frequently a player swings at 75 miles an hour or more. So the actual swing speed, 75 miles an hour plus. And he goes on to say you can think of it roughly as the hard hit rate of swings. To hit a ball hard, you have to swing hard, right? So like I said, it kind of informs what we already have with hard hit rate, barrel rate, and things like that. But I'm not going to replace those, but I'm going to put it alongside, I think, because this seems really valuable. A full 66.2% of Juan Soto's swings are hard, which he says. Then he goes on to say, while only 11% of Mookie Betts's are, which is interesting. Giancarlo Stanton, who, as I always point out, crushes everything he makes contact with, is the league leader here at a whopping 98.4% hard swing rate, which is just ridiculous. And he goes on, provides some other details about the different tools. But let me pull it up real quick. We'll take a quick look at the leaderboard before we dive in. It's a big slate, so I don't want to spend too much time, but it's interesting enough. And I should give you this view. You guys see that? So this is the direct board over at Savant, StatCast. So if we're looking, this is our squared up rate. Blasts were the other one. I left out blasts. I forgot. Let me just give you the definition of what a blast is. Blast is a simple construct. If you swing hard and square the ball up, per the above definitions of hard swing and squared up, that's a blast. If you miss one or both, that's not a blast, right? So a blast rate is a hard swing plus squared up. So it's kind of a summary stat. That's this one. Right, so on competitive swings, squared up rate, Blake Perkins actually leads the league. Then there's Soto, Arias, William Contreras, a lot of guys that really make very, very frequent, solid contact. Mookie's down right in here. There's some interesting guys, though. Look at the rate at which Nolan Chanuel is squaring the ball up. That's pretty aggressive. If we go by on swings, that was on contact. This is on just pure swings, all of your competitive swings. Luis Arias leads the league by a significant margin, which is expected. But Nolan Chanuel, number 2, Nicky Lopez, number 3, is kind of surprising, especially you look at some of these other guys. So the fact that they're squaring the ball up makes them maybe a little bit more interesting. Those days where we're just looking at the White Sox and it's like, well, who's our fourth guy? Maybe Nicky Lopez is a little bit more interesting for things like that. But then if you look over at his blast rate, he's obviously not crushing the ball. We're just talking about a guy who puts competitive swings on the ball frequently and, like a Luis Arias, can put the ball in play, directed into the right spot of the field with a decent amount of hard hit behind it. He's just not connecting for blasts because he lacks the swing speed. Fast swing rate, you can see the average bat speed. So for Nicky Lopez, you're looking at 64.4. That's in line with Arias, Chanuel, but it's obviously not Juan Soto. And I don't think he's necessarily the hitter that Arias is, but makes these two guys kind of more interesting. So I think that's cool. The same thing on your blast rate. William Contreras, Juan Soto, Shohei Ohtani, Giancarlo Stanton, Yandy Diaz, Sal Perez. No surprises in a lot of these, but just a lot of confirmation about things that we know about some of these guys. A few of the guys that you would suspect to be higher, Aaron Judge, Jordan Alvarez, just suffering from some a little bit of slow start, but they're still top 11, both of them. Kyle Tucker and Jordan Alvarez right next to each other there. 17.9% blasts on their competitive swings. William Contreras, though, leading the league, is super interesting. That's whether it's by contact or by swing. Same with Soto and Ohtani and Stanton being there. Judge jumps up the list if we're doing it just by contact. They also have swing length, just the actual how long does it take your swing to get through the zone. And that one's kind of interesting. Javi Baez, by far the longest swing in the league. Makes a lot of sense that he struggles because he's swinging slow. He's got a long plane to his swing. A lot of swing and miss there for Javi, a struggling Nolan Arenado, or a Nolan Arenado not making as much premium contact anyway. But then you've got guys like Stanton, Judgy, Adames, who's hitting for a decent amount of power this year, Mikey Harris, and some of these other power hitters in there that all have long swings. So it's not necessarily a detriment, but it explains a lot about Javi Baez. So just some cool new stats to look at. I encourage everybody to go check it out. Friends don't let friends play Nicky Lopez. See, that's what but that's where we're looking for new data that informs these things, and especially with correlated scoring when he's leading off on, and again, it's a very non-competitive White Sox lineup a lot of days, but on those days where we are looking at them, it gives a little bit of justification for a guy that we typically would rule out. We get it squared away. Speaking of squared up. So 12-game slate, always fun. That's why it looked weird. Lot to talk about. Starting with the Vegas board. Rays at the Red Sox, 9-run total there. Pretty close matchup. Zach Eflin, Cutter Crawford. 4.48 run total for the Rays, 4.62 on the Red Sox side. Kind of a toss-up in that one, but pieces and parts, no doubt about it. Phillies and the Mets. I completely forget the pitching matchup in that one, but we'll get to it. 3.83 run total for the Phillies. On the Mets side, 3.75. The Cubbies and the Braves, 8 run total in the game, 3.72 going to the Cubs. On the Braves side, 4.37. It's a limited Braves lineup. They're probably going to be without Austin Riley. He's probably going to miss at least a few days. He's got an issue with his side. They're not sure whether he's going to go for an MRI. So a weakened Braves lineup, but obviously still deadly. They're going up against Imanaga, and then it's Ronaldo Lopez going back the other way, which is what's limiting the Cubs. Two good teams clipped a little bit by good pitching in that one. The Nats at the White Sox. Looks like a gettable spot for the Nationals. They didn't project out like crazy, but that is an interesting run total, 4.90, 4.20 on the other side for the lousy White Sox. See what happens there. The Pirates against the Brewers, that's a spot I really like. The Pirates just at a 3.95 implied total. I don't, it's one of those spots where I hate going against what a run total is telling me from Vegas. But some of those Pirates lefty bats for power upside going up against Colin Ray, it's really, really interesting. I made O'Neill Cruz the home run pick of the day. I kind of like that spot for the Pirates, and they're cheap, and they fit together with some of the premium teams really, really well. So I kind of like the Pirates here, despite a 3.95 implied total. The Brewers on the other side, 4.64, kind of a healthy total going there against Mitch Keller. The Guardians and the Rangers, 9-run total, even up game. 4.54 on the Guardian side, 4.56 on the Rangers side. That should be a good one to draw bats from on either side. There's enough offense in that game. Athletics with Ross Stripling on the mound, going up against the Astros. The Astros are drawing a ton of power and a ton of runs as the highest run total on the board at 4.18. The A's, typically low end, 3.93 implied total for them. The Cards and the Angels, 8.5 run total in that one. Another close game on the line. 4.33 for the Cards, 4.26 on the Angels side of things. The Cards ranked out really, really well. It's kind of concerning. We know that we've gotten burnt by the Cards. We know they've been really bad, but there's really nothing I can do. It does look like other places are projecting them out pretty well also. So we will take a hard look at the Cardinals here. But it doesn't make me comfy having to recommend the Cards again after they've disappointed us so many times. We try not to think about that, but it is lurking in the back of my mind. The Reds, the Diamondbacks, Jordan Montgomery going for the Diamondbacks, keeping them down to a 3.88 total against that free-swinging Cincinnati team. Coming the other way, 4.72 implied total for the Diamondbacks. Not a bad spot for them. 8.5 run total for the game. The Royals at the Mariners, that one's a low-end total, 3.22 on the Royals side, and then on the Mariners side, 3.86. Premium pitching spot in that one. Kind of interesting. Rockies and the Padres, 8-run total there, 3.23 on the Rockies side. Very low-end going up against Vasquez for the Padres. The Pods are pulling a 4.82 implied total against Dakota Hudson. Seems like a pretty good spot there. The Dodgers against the Giants at the end of the night, 4.39 implied total for Los Angeles, 3.20 on the Giants going up against Yamamoto, one of the, looking like anyway, one of the top pitchers in baseball, and finally rounded into form and broke out an interesting pitch in his last performance. So seems like a spot to look for pitching, but he's very, very high priced. Let me resort this. So you can see Yamamoto top of the board on both sites. I think that makes a ton of sense against that Giants team. When it had Gavin Stone in there, he was projecting out pretty well. He was like here. So I think that's a very interesting spot to look at some pitching if you can afford it. 10-6, 10-5. He's very expensive. Imanaga going up against the Braves, but a depleted version of the Braves, and he's been spectacular. I don't mind going to him as an alternative. If I built a really nice lineup that I liked, you could probably guess the teams based on what I just said a few minutes ago. And I had a good amount of pitching money, and when I thought that Yamamoto wasn't going, I was like, boom, Imanaga from the top of the board. That works for me. Even against the Braves, I'll take it based on how good he's been, how he projects out here. That said, it is still a Braves team with a lot of dangerous hitters against the lefty in it. So there's a little bit of threat there. At 9-3 on the DraftKings slate, I think it looks pretty good. So happy to have him from the third spot. George Kirby going for the Mariners. Potentially dominant spot for him against the Royals. The Royals are frisky. They've got a lot of hitters that we like, a lot of guys we like for DFS, a couple of guys we just saw on that board, Sal Perez. But I just really like Kirby. I think he's a terrific pitcher. I think it's a very high-end spot for him. I like how it projects out for the money at 94, 9,000 across sites. Ronaldo Lopez going to be challenged by that Cubs lineup. Same as Imanaga by the Braves lineup, I think. I like that they project side by side. 9,700 on either site for Lopez is pretty fair. Brady Singer going for KC on the other side of the Seattle KC game. You can see just some of those guys from the same games topping the board here. But Singer, I think, if he continues to pitch on form, we see him in spots all the time. He's had a couple good seasons. He's had a couple bad seasons. But at 9,300 and especially at 88 on the DraftKings slate against a Mariners lineup that just has so much swing and miss and so many strikeouts in it, I think it's kind of an interesting one. Zach Eflin, just a good pitcher for a fair price, 8,900. Going into Fenway is not ideal. 8,200 on the DraftKings slate. That gives him a decent amount of pop as a value option. You could use Eflin, I think, as an SP1 at that price. Pair him with another guy, call it Chris Sanchez against the Mets for 79. That's not a bad pairing from the value bin. Or if you wanted to use him to, lever up and go expensive, probably works. Depends on what you can get with it in that case. But Eflin, probably Sanchez is my favorite out of these mid-range options. Although Vasquez is kind of interesting there. If you went Eflin at 82 and Vasquez at 6,000 against the Rockies, that's not crazy. So I think there is a decent amount of pitching value on the board on the DraftKings slate if you, again, look at just some of these guys in the upper middle part of the board. But that's obviously leaving the four best pitchers on the table. Sanchez against the gettable Mets lineup, 8,879. The price is right. Makes total sense. Can definitely deploy him on FanDuel. No issues with it. Mania is always a little trickier on FanDuel. For one, it's a brutal matchup against the Phillies. Even as a lefty, it's not a spot I love. I think the projections aren't necessarily off. It's just Mania's ceiling is typically artificially capped a little bit by just a lack of depth in most of his starts. And then he's gettable. So it's not great, but the price is fair. That's all baked into those prices, 75, 72. If he was consistently giving us, 6 or 5 and change, he's giving us 5 and change. But if it was consistently giving us 6, he'd be a little bit more high priced on his talent. So it's not off based on where the price is. Tanner Bybee, just a rough one against Texas, 8,300, 8,400. Hasn't been the best version of himself, let's say, so far this year. 4 earned runs in his last game, 6 earned runs in the game before that. Has made some good starts, including some against good teams, but he's a little bit more difficult to trust. He projects out just kind of in the middle of the board, but again, that's another spot where that's just kind of baked into the price. He's a better than $8,300, $8,400 pitcher, so you're getting a discount. Randy Vasquez is just okay, but he's facing the Rockies at home. Righty against the Rockies on the road is a killer spot always. So 7,000, 6,000 looks like a premium value option. Cutter Crawford, reasonable spot, more so on DraftKings for 86 than at 96 on FanDuel. He doesn't project like a killer here. He's just in the dead center of the board. So I don't know that I would want to pay it really on either side given all the options, but I think he's at least in this mix of guys on the DraftKings slate. It's just that he's one of the more expensive ones. On FanDuel, it's just off. Is he better than Brady Singer against the Mariners? Possibly. He's certainly not close to Ronaldo Lopez. Imanaga for only a little bit more doesn't really make sense even with the matchup. He's certainly not 200 better than George Kirby. So it's just a little bit of an awkward price. Mitch Keller, kind of similar, 9,000, 9,200 based on where he prices out. He doesn't even qualify really on DraftKings for me. You can consider him in this mix for sure, but it's just, pushing him up to an even higher price against a capable Brewers team. Not ideal. Liberator I don't love, but the matchup against the Angels is pretty terrific. Montgomery, as we always say about him, just more of a real-life pitcher than a DFS pitcher. It is talented for sure. there are days where he can go out and find some additional strikeouts. He wasn't bad at all in his last start. He typically pitches deep into games. So you can find value on innings pitched for a cheap price, especially on DraftKings at 75, 81 on FanDuel. Reasonable opportunity for a quality start and maybe some bonus strikeouts. So I think there is ceiling on this projection, but I also don't think it should necessarily push up in the median sense up into this level. So I think he's correctly in the middle of the board. Trevor Williams, good matchup for a bad pitcher against the White Sox. Graham Ashcraft, bad matchup, 8,500, 7,600. You can roll the dice with those guys. Either one of them can break off a win at any given time, but I don't think there's all that much quality there given everything that's above them. It's just a deep slate in the mid-range there. Colin Ray, as I mentioned, I'm targeting with those Pittsburgh bats. I'm not exactly sure why Vegas has him kind of keeping them in check, other than the fact that Pittsburgh just hasn't been good. Spencer Arrighetti is not uninteresting at 73-72. He's faced some really tough teams to start the season, so we'll take a good look at him against Oakland. Jose Soriano, as I said, I'm getting solid projections on the cards, which is weird. He hasn't been spectacular. 74-65. That Cardinals team's just been so bad that I wouldn't tell you that he's totally off the board from the bargain bin. Jordan Hicks just don't really want to tangle with the Dodgers. That said, he's given up, I think, 1 home run all year. So it's a fair price. Just would need to give you 6 competitive innings and really, really limit a good Dodgers lineup, which is tough when they're the top team on the board. Michael Lorenzen against the Guardians doesn't seem like a good matchup for him, just given the Guardians' premium contact, ability to put the ball in play. Don't love that spot for Lorenzen. Flexing against the Nats. We saw the Nats were drawing a decent run total in that one, so maybe they're a little bit interesting. I really don't see the Chris Flexen play. Same thing for Ross Stripling against the Astros and Dakota Hudson against the Padres. I'm sure a bunch of lineups came in while I was talking instead of in all the time that I was killing before the show. Actually, it doesn't look like. So we've got the Bo Sox in. We'll start here. Let's see what's going on in the chat. Nothing. You guys are quiet today. There's a quiet 42 people here. Welcome, everybody who wasn't here when I welcomed everybody to the show earlier. So starting off, Cutter Crawford, 24.3% strikeout rate on the season. Just a 1.75 ERA with a 3.99 xFIP. He's not giving up any hard hits. 30.2% hard hits and 86.9 miles an hour of exit velo are spectacular. Just a 1.06% home run rate. He's pitching deep into games. He's booked at least 6 innings in each of his last 4 starts. Last time he went 6, struck out 6. Gave up a homer, 2 earned runs, but non-tragic run totals there. Homer and 2 earned runs on 4 hits in 7 innings, struck out 6, walked 2 against the Giants. That most recent game that I mentioned before, that was against the Braves at Atlanta. Faced the Cubbies over 6, gave up 3 earned on 4 hits. 3 earned, 4 total runs on 10 hits. Struck out just 4, walked 0. 6 strikeout game with 3 walks. Just 1 earned run on 7 hits against the Pirates. So while he's been pitching well and Stuff Plus does like the arsenal, it's not super high-end numbers. I think that's why I think he's just a little bit expensive at 96 on the FanDuel slate. I don't know that there's much beyond a 6 strikeout ceiling. 12.3% swinging is very, very good. 27% CSW is okay for that much swinging strike. He should have a better CSW. It's just this Rays team, or at least this projected version of the lineup, not a ton of strikeouts in it. 19.5% this year so far. Same group of hitters, 19.7. They also draw walks. He walks a 7.9%. That's neither good nor bad. But you can see the xFIP, decent amount higher than the ERA. I think he's a high 3s, mid 4s kind of a pitcher in the long term. And just spit directly on the microphone. So in the long term, I think he settles in, they call it 3.5 to 4.25 as a, end of the season ERA if it settles into the expected numbers, the xFIP, the Sierra. But again, he has been pitching well. So I think at the DraftKings price, it's justifiable. I like other options better on FanDuel, and I think there's more ceiling on other options. But it certainly wouldn't knock me out of my chair if Cutter Crawford had a good day today. Zach Eflin on the other side projects out pretty well, 8,900, 8,200. He's got a 3.75 ERA, a 3.59 xFIP. He's only walking 2%. It's not a high-end strikeout option, 19.5% against a Red Sox lineup that has some strikeouts in it, 23.7% this year, 25.8% for the same group of guys last year. Some small samples in the this year numbers with Dom Smith, Vaughn Grissom, Romy Gonzalez, though. It's a gettable enough Red Sox team. Eflin needs to be on form. But he pitches deep into ball games. He's pitched into the 6th inning in all but one of his starts this year. He had a 5-inning start back on April 8th against the Angels. Struck out 5, but gave up 5 earned on 9 hits. That was his second worst start of the year, excuse me. 5 2/3 in his first start. He gave up 6 earned on 6 hits to Toronto. 3 home runs allowed in that one. Struck out 5. That was on March 28th. Forgivable. Consider that spring training. He hasn't been totally sharp this year. Stuff Plus doesn't love the arsenal. The strikeouts are down 26.5% over 177 2/3 last year. I think he might have been overperforming his talent last year. He had a really strong season last year. 3.50 ERA, 3.13 xFIP. You can see the swinging strikes were better. CSW was a little bit better. Strikeout rate was much better. The walk rate was similar. But if you look back to the year before, it looks more like this guy. So I think this might be an outlier season when we get to the end of the Zach Eflin career. But I don't think he's a bad pitcher, and I think the price is fair, especially on DraftKings at 82. He projects out very well. And again, there are some strikeouts. If he finds his form from last year for a night, you're dealing with a pretty good pitcher for a pretty cheap price for tonight only. Just 3 strikeouts in 7 innings against the lousy White Sox in his last start. That's a little disappointing. Gave up 1 earned run on 6 hits. Didn't walk any. The 1 earned run came on a solo home run. 3 earned in the game before that in 5 2/3. He went 6 in 2 straight starts. Pitched into the 7th on April 15th against the Angels. 4, 5, 6 strikeouts through those games. So again, 6 strikeouts, something along those lines. 6 strikeouts. 6+ clean innings, the ability to book a quality start here. An okay chance at the win. What was the line in this one? Yeah, they're pretty much even up. So you've got at least an average chance at the win. And with his ability to pitch deep into games, if things are going well, it boosts that a little. On FanDuel, you get the shot at the quality start. I would take either of these lineups against these pitchers. I think there's enough quality up and down for both of these teams. In the Red Sox confirmed lineup, Jarren Duran, Willy Abreu to start things off, both lefties. Fair price is $4,733 for Duran and $4,032 for Abreu. Not bad for 2 guys who were off to decent starts. A 104 WRC plus for Duran as the team's leadoff hitter. 328 on base. He needs to boost that a little bit. He's got speed with 9 stolen bases. He's got a little bit more pop than he's showing. Made better premium contact last year, 45.7% hard hits in a small sample. 183 plate appearances, a growing sample. That's down to 39.7%. Abreu over 120 has been very, very good. 282, 375, 476, a 194 ISO. Currently runs 37% better than average. Connor Wong's been even better in his 95. 5 home runs, 213 ISO, 161 WRC plus. And again, that's without even really squaring the ball up like he has over the past couple of years, or barreling the ball. I can't say squaring up without referring to the stat now. Rafi Devers, doing Rafi Devers things. Remember when the sites, actually DraftKings still has him really cheap. FanDuel's kind of course corrected at 35, but he's justifiably better than that. I don't know why DraftKings has Rafi Devers so cheap. He was never really struggling this season. But they dipped his price when some of the triple slash numbers weren't great. I guess he's down for power a little bit. 4 home runs and a 194 ISO. But he's still barreling the ball 14.3%, 51.9% hard hit. Like he's not off. Striking out 24.2, walking 14.1. So maybe some of the home runs fell into those strikeout numbers. Big swing and a miss, he makes contact with it. It goes for a home run. He misses. It's a strikeout. So I don't think we're anywhere near as struggling as that 5,000 price might indicate. Good one-off option to keep in mind at third base. Any given slate, Rafi Devers is always in play. 8.86 to lead the team in the home run model. Tyler O'Neill at 59.32. He's definitely cooled off. He's been stuck at 9 home runs for a minute. Still 300 ISO. Still making fantastic contact. 18.6% barrels, 42.9% hard hits in 130 plate appearances. Creating runs 56% better than average. I don't think all that much of Dom Smith, but he's very, very cheap at first base. He does have the ability to put bat on ball at least a somewhat capable level. He hit 12 home runs last year in 586 plate appearances. Not great power, but 254, 326, 366. He's okay from the left side of the plate if you need a cheap mixer in this lineup. Vaughn Grissom is a well-regarded young player. Over 29 plate appearances. He hasn't been great. He was good in 80 plate appearances in a cup of coffee last year and a little better in a cup of coffee over 156 the year before. So definitely somebody that's playable in the middle infield. Second base for 2,600 is a good price. Good positioning for him on the DraftKings slate. 22 in either middle infield spot. Prefer him as a second baseman, but either way. Romy Gonzalez for 22-23, triple position eligible on FanDuel, and then Ceddanne Rafaela. They're positionally blocked on DraftKings, so you can't get them together from the bottom of the lineup, but that's fine. You don't really want them You don't really want them both in the lineup if you're wrapping something around. On FanDuel, you can get them because Rafaela has quad position eligibility for 2,800. Talented kid who hasn't really been going well. 213, 241, 368, a 62 WRC plus. Just got traded by Mike Brown, a pretty sharp owner in the Dynasty League, so that says a lot. Romy Gonzalez over 15 plate appearances. Been pretty productive so far. Last year in 97 wasn't that good. 3 homers, 7 steals is okay for DFS, but he was 51% worse than average creating runs in that tiny sample. 109 plate appearances, not much better the year before. So you're not getting a ton of quality, but you are getting a cheap mix and match part on the FanDuel slate anyway. On the Rays side, I do like Yandy Diaz off the top. Josh Lowe back in the lineup for them over the last couple of games. He's made 19 plate appearances on the season, creating runs, doing Josh Lowe things already. Hasn't hit for power, hasn't scored any runs, driven in any runs, or stolen any bases, but he's 294, 368, 412. So the rest of that is going to come as long as he continues to get on base. But again, that's 19 plate appearances. Last year in 501, he hit 20 homers. He stole 32 bases, created runs 31% better than average, and had a 208 ISO on pretty decent contact. Randy Arozarena continuing to struggle, 158, 263, 329. It's been ugly, 77 WRC plus, 7 homers, 7 steals. We all know that Randy Arozarena is a much better player than that. Don't mind the upside at 3,300, 4,600. If I'm going to this team, he's an absolute priority in the heart of that lineup. Isaac Paredes, their best current power hitter, 8 home runs, also slashing 300, 387, 514, 214 ISO. And that's without any kind of premium contact. He's a weird one. Actually, I want to look at him on that StatCast board and just see what that's all about. Because last year, 5.9% barrels, 28.3% hard hits, hit 31 home runs. Those numbers fit together strangely. So I got to check him out. He'll be an interesting one to look at on that board. Maybe we'll find him on tomorrow's show. That reminds me. Remember last week I said this week was going to be screwy shows-wise. I think it's probably just going to be today, tomorrow, and then we will see what Wednesday looks like because I got to go down to my parents' house. It turns out I got to go travel south to go back north to get to the airport. We're flying out of Kennedy for some reason instead of Newark, which is like 10 minutes from my house the other way. So it was a different plan than I thought it was. So we'll see what Wednesday looks like. And then Thursday, Friday, and then Monday of next week, a week from today, I'll be gone. Projections, all the content up on the website as best I can while I'm remote at my cousin's wedding in Texas. Fortunately, we're in the civilized part of Texas that does have the internet. But everything should be expected, on the website in usual form, but no shows. And probably no articles because I'm just not going to have the time. But we'll see. Continuing on. Richie Palacios, 4,700, 2,700 in the heart of the lineup, over 111. He's been pretty good. Creating runs 40% better than average. Just a 130 ISO, 3 homers, 6 stolen bases, though. One of those Tampa Bay kind of players where he's just productive in multiple categories and he's doing pretty well on the season in a fair amount of plate appearances. However, Ramirez, I talk about it all the time, more of a line drives option, but a productive guy. So far this year, 276, 290, 321. Not a great triple slash. A homer, 4 stolen bases, just a 79 WRC plus. He's a better player than that. We'll see if he's in the lineup. Johnny DeLuca, young player with some upside. Over 33 plate appearances, a homer, 2 steals, 168 WRC plus, with upside for more. Rortvet, 3,100, 2,500. He's been okay with the bat so far this year. 318, 438, 364 is pretty good. No homers, 1 stolen base, a 146 WRC plus. As a cheap mixer of a catcher, if you're building 20 Rays stacks for some reason, you can absolutely throw him in. Jose Caballero at the bottom of the lineup has 15 stolen bases on the year. Productive for steals, 98 WRC plus. Be interesting if 309 on base isn't great. You don't really want to replace Yandy at the top of the lineup. He did get on a 343 clip last year. Yeah, I guess he's just more relegated to the bottom of the lineup because of their spectacular leadoff hitter. But Caballero, given the fact that he did get on base at a much better rate last year, stole 26 bases in 280 plate appearances. If you're just looking for that as a cheap wraparound, he's got triple position eligibility on the FanDuel slate. Again, if you're building 20 Rays stacks, definitely should be on your radar, should be on the board. This lineup could be in many different forms, though. So this is kind of one of those mid four corners games, but everything is just kind of in the middle. Right, Rays playable, but not a priority. Red Sox playable, not a priority. Rafi Devers, though, does look spectacular as a one-off option on the DraftKings slate, and very playable at $3,500 on the FanDuel slate. You're just not saving quite as much at that price relative to the cap. And then both pitchers, probably Eflin for 82 on DraftKings is probably my favorite spot here. Cutter Crawford is an awkward fit at 96 on the FanDuel slate. 86 on DraftKings, he's fine. 89 on FanDuel for Eflin is fine. But everything's just, it's fine. I don't think there's a priority in this game. That's why I spent 25 minutes on it. Let's see what's going on. Mamba likes civilized part of Texas. Yeah, Trev. I mean, there are probably parts of Texas that are not covered by the internet, as Mamba's saying in there, but yeah, most of the places you would have ever heard of in Texas, there's just a lot of open space in Texas. I'm sure we'll drive through some parts where I don't have a cell phone signal and stuff, though. That's why I was like, I'll have a 3-hour drive on Friday from San Antonio to College Station. I don't know what's in between those, so I didn't want to promise that I'd be able to get the projections up during the afternoon that day. Yeah, look, there are parts of the country that still have, still use dial-up internet, which is just bonkers. Broadband connectivity is important for people. Should be everywhere. Should also be free. Anyway, Phillies. Let's see if we got the lineup for anybody else. We got the Marlins and the Orioles lineups in. Deal with those later. So the Phillies going up against Manaea. I think they're totally playable. It is a lefty, so a couple of their key bats will be facing a lefty-lefty situation. There's no Schwarbs in the projected lineup here, I'm noticing. Did Schwarbs take a bump? Back soreness for Schwarbs, all right. Keep an eye on that spot. Obviously, if Kyle Schwarber's at the top of the lineup, it enhances this lineup a little bit. Even against the lefty, he can still mash. So I don't mind that, especially, lefty like Manaea, only a 20.4% strikeout rate this year. He does have an 11% swinging, 24.2% CSW is pathetic with an 11% swinging strike rate, though. And I think he's a gettable enough pitcher. Stuff Plus doesn't really like him. Hasn't given up many home runs this year, so he's clipping the wings a little bit for these guys. But you can see Bryce is still coming through at 8.95, 6.95 for Real Muto. Alec Boehm, who was one of those highly ranked players on that StatCast board that we were looking at before, 5.44. Continuing to do very, very good things at the plate. So it's an interesting enough Phillies lineup. I think it kind of limits the upside for Manaea, who is just kind of limited in terms of his ceiling, as I was saying before anyway. He did go 6 in his last start. He went 6 in his most recent start. That was against the Cards. And he went 6 in his first start of the year on April 1st against the Tigers. Every other start, he fell short of 6 innings. Actually, he didn't go more than 5 innings in any of his starts. So there's no 5 1/3 or anything like that. He didn't come out for the 6th inning in all but his most recent and his first start of the year. In that most recent one against the Cards, he only struck out 1. Walked 1, gave up 3 earned on 6 hits. He got the win, but that's not a great DFS start. For the money at 72-75, he gave you 3 strikeouts in the game before that, over 5 innings, gave up just 1 earned on 3 hits to the Cubs. 6 strikeouts in 2 games, had an 8 strikeout day, but it amounts to 20.4% strikeouts this year, 12.5% swinging. Again, just not throwing enough in the zone, not throwing enough called strikes. It was a little bit better last year. Same swinging strike rate, essentially. Was throwing a little bit more called strikes and certainly had a better strikeout rate. This is the Sean Manaea that I think we're all thinking of. That's only over 10 starts, 117 and 2/3. He worked some bulk relief appearances in that as a opener-follower situation last year in San Fran. But it hasn't been great. 12.5% walk rate, 4.96 xFIP, despite the 3.31 ERA. And again, Stuff Plus really doesn't like what the arsenal looks like this year. So just as a bargain bin kind of a play, he's perfectly fine at 72-75, but it is a very good lineup on the other side. So for a pitcher that's only been mediocre and doesn't go deep into games, there are a lot of asterisks on the Sean Manaea playability. On the other side, 7,900 for Christopher Sanchez against the Mets seems like a really reasonable price on DraftKings. 8,800 on FanDuel, I think he's totally playable. 3.22 ERA with a 3.32 xFIP. The whip is a little bit high, too many walks, 21.4% strikeouts. He's been excellent at limiting premium contact, just 3.6% barrels, a 0.7 degree average launch angle. So he's just one of these guys, a lot of worm burners that are just going into the ground. 37.3% hard hit, 88.8 miles an hour of exit velo. But if you can't elevate the ball, that doesn't matter as much. 0.63% home runs. He's given up 1 on the entire season in 7 starts. Last year, 3.9 degree average launch, ended up with a 4.04% home run rate. That's high for that degree of average launch, was giving up a lot of hard hits and a lot of barrels. So when he was making mistakes, there were elevated mistakes that were traveling. Year before, 2.82% home run rate. That was in 99 1/3, by the way. And then this one's in just 40 innings, 3 starts, so partial work as a reliever. 2.82%, but what I want to focus on is just these launch angles. He's been improving it, and this year the results have been fantastic. Going up against a Mets lineup that has not been good this season. So I think it's a very playable spot for Chris Sanchez. Kind of like it, actually. That DraftKings price, again, put him right there. Cheapest guy with the highest projection who's not named Sean Manaea on the other side of this game. Of course, Randy Vasquez for significantly less is really attractive against Colorado. But Sanchez is firmly in that upper value bin, one of the top, not bargain bin, but upper value territory. If you're going to Phillies, if it is this version of the lineup, Whit Merrifield, he's better than this or has been over time. Last year, 272, 318, 382. The year before, 250, 298, 375. Those are not ideal leadoff hitter numbers. It'll be interesting to see if the Phils roll with him in that spot. But he'd be minorly playable. He's a right-handed hitter. 3,200, 2,600, not going to be necessarily looking to hit home runs. Just be a correlated scoring option. Real Muto, 52, 31, totally playable catcher, 5 home runs on the season, a 170 ISO, 118 WRC+, does a lot of good things at the plate. He is striking out a lot, 25.9% this year, 25.6% last year. He's followed by Harper at 22.1, 21.8% last year, but it's Bryce Harper. He's got 9 home runs on the season. He's stolen 2 bases, a 246 ISO, 11.1% barrels, 44.4% hard hits. Both of those are down slightly in a small sample this year. But still doing great things at first base for 5,500, 3,900. He's the critical piece if you're stacking this team. Probably followed by Alec Bohm. Bohm at 338, 400, 534, a 63% better than average WRC+. 4 home runs, terrific contact, right-handed hitter, 56, 36. Still a pretty fair price for a guy who's been absolutely raking over the past 3 weeks. Nicky Castellanos, 4,229, off to a pretty rough start. Hit a couple homers recently, just a 72 WRC+, still just a 111 ISO, but maybe coming on a little bit, maybe finding his form for the year. Did have a good year last year, ended up with 29 home runs. Bryson Stott, 270, 370, 426. He would be the right candidate, I think, for that leadoff spot. It's just lefty-lefty. They might not do that. But given his on-base skills, given his just general hit tool, he's got speed. He's got 10 stolen bases on the year. Seems like the right guy to go into that leadoff spot if you're not using Schwarber there. Edmundo Sosa has been pretty productive in 51 plate appearances. Christian Pache, mostly here for defense. And Johan Rojas has also been frisky anyway. 2 home runs, 9 steals, a weak triple slash. If you're going to the Mets against Sanchez, which I don't completely love, just with the ability to maybe take some of the power away, you do still see Alonso there at 12.08. It's difficult to suppress Pete Alonso's power the way the model works. He's got 9 home runs on the season, a 230 ISO, 117 WRC+. Just Pete Alonso and Brandon Nimmo, though, on a team that's got, relatively complete samples of plate appearances for this season. Just those 2 guys above average for run creation this year. This Mets team's been a little bit rough. At 4,400, 3,000, Brendan Nimmo is always interesting to me. Very good leadoff hitter. Even with the weak average, he's still getting on at a 379 clip. He's got power from the left side, 6 home runs, and he's created runs 41% better than average. Marte, 255, 301, 372, and just a 97 WRC+, 4 home runs, 7 steals. If I'm not mistaken, Nimmo took a bump over the weekend, too. I think he was questionable coming into the day, but it looks like he's going to be leading off, by the way. But if you worry a little bit about injuries and current form, then maybe a reason to ding him beyond the potential lack of power. Francisco Lindor, very cheap at 4,700, 3,400 for his talent. 7 home runs, 4 stolen bases, a 98 WRC+, a 188 ISO. As I've said a number of times already, we're not far off the mark. The barrels are down slightly. That's happenstance in a small sample of batted ball events. That'll be fine. 43.4% hard hits is identical to last year's output. And again, guy hit 31 home runs, stole 31 bases, had a 216 ISO, 21% better than average for run creation. He's 30 now. So he's on the, he's up top of the hill, coming down the other side. But he's still very much up toward the top of the mountain on the other side if he's coming down the other side at all. Maybe he's just lingering at the top and it's just a weird start. Happy to pay the price for Lindor. I just don't know if this is the spot to be stacking Mets. JD Martinez, 3,500, 2,800. The price is right. He hit his first home run, 102 ISO. Perfectly reasonable if you're stacking Mets. A lot of power lurking there. Solid premium contact so far this year. Brett Beatty for 27-26. 3 home runs, .091 ISO. Meh. He's all right. The premium contact from last year has kind of evaporated so far. He's been up and down statistically over the last couple of weeks. He's definitely playable, but again, lefty-lefty, especially going up against this lefty who keeps the ball on the ground, doesn't seem ideal. Bader, McNeil, Tomas Nido, kind of afterthoughts at the bottom of the Mets lineup. Phillies against Manaea are a yes. Chris Sanchez against the Mets is a yes. Sean Manaea on the other side. I think the ceiling is limited, but the price is right. You're just probably not dealing with much beyond the median projection there. Mets, I think, limited by Sanchez potentially keeping the ball on the yard. Lazy mofos. Are we in a safe enough time period to hear and a deep drive from Castellanos? It's still one of the weirder moments in recent years. Cubbies, Shota Imanaga going up against the Braves. Like I said at the top of the show, he's been spectacular this year. I have no issues with it. Stuff Plus doesn't love the arsenal, but I think just watching him pitch and looking at what the results have been like, I think there's a case to be made that he does things that Stuff Plus doesn't account for, as do other guys who change up timing, change up arm angle, do things to keep hitters' timing off a little bit. That's part of his game, and he's got some very good pitches. The full arsenal just slightly below average, but the results have been terrific. Over 7 starts, 41 2/3. He's got a 108 ERA with a 3.26 xFIP. He's only walking 3.1%, 26.9% strikeout rate on a terrific 14.7% swinging strike rate. A little bit more work in the zone would push the CSW up. This is very, very low for a 14.7% swinging strike rate. But again, it's working for him. 5.4% barrels allowed, just moderate premium contact, 1.88% home runs. Took him a while to give up his first runs. Where the hell is he? There he is. He's also been working deep into games. 6 innings in his first start of the year. He struck out 9 in a 2-hit shutout against the Rockies. Faced the Dodgers after that. Only went 4 in that game. 3 strikeouts. Forget what happened there, but limited them. No runs on 2 hits. No earned runs. 1 run scored on 5 hits in 5 1/3 against Seattle in his third start. Only struck out 4 against the Mariners. I bet he'd like to have that one back and see how many he'd strike out now. The strikeout totals have increased as time has gone along. 9 strikeouts against the Rockies in that first game. We'll just write that off to the Rockies in a spring training game. Then it was 3, 4, 5, 7, 7, 8. The 7, 7, and 8 came against the Red Sox, the Mets, and the Padres. Very solid performances there, but he started giving up earned runs midway through the stretch. He hasn't given up more than 2 earned runs in a game yet this year. In the last 4 starts, he's gone 6 innings, 6 1/3, 7 and 7. So he's pitched into the 7th inning in each of his last 3. And again, that's against the Red Sox at Boston, against the Mets in Queens, and against San Diego at home in Chicago. Those are some very, very good starts. So given how good he's been against tough opponents, given how good he's been overall, given the fact that it is almost certainly going to be a depleted Braves lineup with no Austin Riley in it, not that he's been great this season, but he is a terrific right-handed power hitter, I think it's an easily playable spot. And he's a little bit cheaper than Yamamoto at the top of the board. He's a little bit more expensive than George Kirby. George Kirby, definitely a better matchup against the Royals. He's certainly more expensive than Reynaldo Lopez on the other side of this game. If you prefer him, we'll talk about him in just a sec. No issues with it. But I like Imanaga here. I think there's a playable enough spot. The Braves are striking out at a 23.4% rate. Same group of hitters, 21.3% last year. Some of their best hitters are gettable for strikeouts. Ronnie Acuna, 25.6% this year. That's up from 11.4% last year, though. If you want to identify what's gone on with Acuna to result in just 3 home runs, 252, 360, 354 to start the season, that's exactly where I would start. I would expect it'll normalize, but does it get all the way down to 11.4 again? That's going to be tough. But I would expect it to drop probably below 20% before everything's said and done. But Ronnie's been a little gettable this season. Ozzie Albies doesn't strike out that much, but Marcell Ozuna does. Matt Olson certainly does at 25.8% this year, 23.2% last year. Adam Duvall, if he's in the lineup, which he probably will be against the lefty, 25% this year, 31.2% last year, so a little bit better last year in a small sample of 64 plate appearances. Darno's gettable for strikeouts. Mikey Harris is a little bit gettable. Bottom of the lineup, potentially Zach Short. Super gettable in very small samples. A lot of upside here for Imanaga. 9,300 is a very good price on DraftKings, too. The matchup is, I think that's probably a full Braves lineup matchup kind of a price. So that's an interesting spot. Lopez on the other side, 97 on both sides. Projects out very well. 25.5% strikeouts. He's got a 1.53 ERA with a 3.77 xFIP. 11.8% swinging, 28.1% CSW. He's been decent at limiting premium contact as well. He's given up 44% hard hits. That's the deceptive part. I care a little bit about this as a potential warning sign. The fact that Stuff Plus has him 5 points below average as well for the full arsenal. The xFIP being 2 full runs plus higher than the ERA. I think this is the more accurate number. He walks too many at 9.9%. Just a 1.13 whip. I got to expect there's a pretty low BABIP against that comes with that. So while I do think he's talented, I think he's maybe been pitching a little bit better than he is, maybe getting a little bit lucky. And tell you what, it's not actually as low as I would have expected. 270 BABIP. BABIP against. Interesting. I'm not sure how he's getting away with that whip with a 9.9% walk rate then. But again, totally playable, does project out well for 97. There's just a few blips in here that have me concerned in the more long term. He hasn't given up many home runs, but he is giving up a 44% hard hit rate. That means the low barrel's probably a little bit of happenstance because the launch angle is a fly ball trajectory. So this could easily flip and start giving up some home runs in the near future. He gave up 1 in 2 out of his last 3 games to back that point up maybe a little bit. Went 5 innings 2 games ago, struck out 7, gave up a homer, 3 earned runs on 6 hits. Most recent start, struck out 5 but walked 4, gave up just 1 earned run on 6 hits, 2 runs total in 5 1/3. Booked 6 innings in 4 starts with a 7-inning start included there. Went 5 1/3 in the most recent one. So pitching effectively deep into games at a little bit of a discount from the top of the board, the very top of the board price and projection wise, definitely in play. I do have a healthy respect for the Cubs and their ability to get on base. The fact that they definitely have some power in the lineup. We'll see what version of the Cubs lineup we get. Let me reload real quick. Doesn't look like we have it yet. Mike Tauchman still getting on at a 406 clip over 143 plate appearances, 3 home runs, 3 steals, a 145 WRC plus, an effective correlated scoring option who's still only cost 3,800, 3,200. From any of the top 5 or 6 spots in the lineup, Tauchman is definitely playable in stacks of Cubs. Kind of until further notice. He doesn't strike out. He draws a ton of walks, 18.2% strikeouts, 17.5% walks. That's phenomenal. If he made a little bit better contact, he'd be really interesting. Career journeyman type guy, but caught on in Chicago a little bit last year with a 370, I want to say 6 on base percentage, and doing a little better this year. 363. Damn. That's close. I was giving him a little too much credit. Seiya Suzuki, interesting hitter, 4,800, 3,300. Over 79 plate appearances, missed a little time, 290, 354, 478, 136 WRC plus, 3 homers and a stolen base. If he's in the lineup, that's a very effective price for a decent hitter. You can see the premium contact last year, this year, year before. Interesting bat from the right side of the plate. Cody Bellinger, Chris Morel, both hit for a decent amount of power. 7 home runs for Cody Bellinger. Chris Morel kind of surging. He's up to 9 home runs, 221 ISO for him, 245 for Bellinger. Cody's creating runs 30% better than average. Morel at 114 WRC plus. Not bad. Ian Happ has been underperforming his talent so far this year. There's no denying it, but still getting on at a 341 clip. That's what's going to keep him relevant. And he's got better power than this. He's got just generally better upside. You can see all the walks here, though. For a guy walking 9.9%, I worry about all these walks in the Cubs lineup. Nico doesn't strike out really, does draw walks, but this still means he's putting the ball in play with frequency. He'd be another interesting guy to look at on that board compared to where does he measure up against their eyes for the squared up rates, despite what is probably a slow swing. 275, 364, 399. Doing Nico Hoerner things. Stole his 5th base of the year, creating runs 22% better than average. A frisky, contact-oriented hitter who, if Mike Tauchman wasn't getting on so frequently, would be a very easy option in the leadoff spot. We could certainly see him lead off today, but Tauchman's a lefty, so either way, I do think Nico's playable from any of the top 6, 7 spots, or as a wraparound, honestly, from the bottom of the lineup. Michael Busch, a lot of power to start, 7 home runs over 150 plate appearances, 226 ISO, still a 14.5% barrel rate, still only costs 4,200, 2,900 first and third base eligibility. If Patrick Wisdom lands on the lineup, despite the righty on the mound, he's always interesting for power upside with multi-position for a cheap price. Got a home run out of him as the home run pick, I think, yesterday. Miles Mastrobuoni, Miguel Amaya at the bottom of the lineup, kind of afterthoughts. But the top 7 in basically any configuration of the Cubbies lineup, it's going to be pretty interesting. Acuna, I'm going to continue to say that even as FanDuel is lowering the price gradually every day, DraftKings staying firm at 63. I think that's down from 65. I'm going to say they're still doing the right thing because the any given slate upside for Ronald Acuna is just bananas. He's still, despite really struggling, striking out way more than he did last year, still creating runs 11% better than average. Still has 14 steals. Just 3 home runs, 252, 360, 354. We're getting on base a ton. That's what's keeping the WRC plus alive. But we know there is one of the best players in baseball lurking in here somewhere. So I think it's correct to keep him at high prices. Makes it more difficult to stack this team, though. Ozzy Albies is a little bit cheap at 53.37. He's got 3 home runs, missed some time, 114 WRC plus, just 132 plate appearances. Contact's been a little bit off for Albies. Contact has been there for these guys. It's resulted in 12 home runs, 326, 404, 638 for Marcell Ozuna with a 312 ISO, a 190 WRC plus. He's been almost as good as Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, and so on and so forth this season. Just terrific output from Marcell Ozuna, who never should have been regarded as not a good player. It's just he's become a great player over the last season plus. Olsen scuffling along, just 200, 314, 363, and 93 WRC plus, 4 home runs on the season. Still making phenomenal contact. Striking out around the same rate, drawing a little bit fewer, slightly fewer walks, but enough time to correct it. Dude hit 54 home runs last year. I think we can give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. 321 ISO. Year before, 34 home runs, 237 ISO. Maybe it's more this season than it is this season. This terrific season in the long term. This is still very, very good for DFS purposes. You don't skip Matty Olson, even lefty-lefty. It's just this is a good lefty with a lot of swing and miss on the mound. So it's probably not the right spot to be stacking Braves. But if you wanted to take the Braves, it's probably a fairly contrarian option. I can't imagine they're going to be all that popular, even if people don't go to Imanaga against. I wouldn't think they're going to be all that popular. So it would be a contrarian enough spot. But you can see he's having an impact on the home run numbers. And Matty Olson, there are certainly strikeouts there. Duvall, a lot of strikeouts, exactly the same, except from the right side of the plate. Tons of premium contact, just 2 home runs on the season, but only 64 plate appearances. Travis d'Arnaud has 5 and 102. We know that he can crush the ball when he makes contact with it. He's a very cheap catcher option. Michael Harris, 43-28, plenty of skills, 3 home runs, 5 steals, just a 92 WRC plus and a fairly slow start. Orlando Arcia, 4 home runs. Been up and down a little bit with the bat. Seems to be hitting in hot and cold stretches so far this season, but 17 home runs last year. Pretty good shortstop option for cheap pricing. And then Zach Short, if he's in the lineup to fill in for Austin Riley, more of an afterthought at the bottom. Last year in 253 plate appearances, he did have 7 home runs, 5 stolen bases, but a 204, 292, 339, and 24% worse than average creating runs. Kind of skippable. So it's another one that is, I'm going to put the pitchers on a different tier than the bats in this one, I think. I think Imanago is one of the top pitchers on the slate overall. Lopez not far behind, as we saw on the pitching board. 2 of the top 4 pitchers and right next to one another for good prices. And these are the 4 very talented top pitchers, while Singer, Eflin, even Sanchez to a degree are probably a tier lower in terms of just raw talent. And Lopez, you could probably kick into that tier too, I think. But he has been good. And then probably would prefer the Cubs bats against those questions that I have about Ronaldo's performance this year with all the walks that they draw. It's just, I don't know if it's one of the spots where, they score the times that they go out and put up 8-9 runs and chase Lopez in the 3rd inning or whatever and have a gigantic DFS day are probably pretty limited. I think it's more of a case where a lot of on base in the first, and Lopez goes 6, doesn't have a great DFS start, and the Cubs draw some walks, score some runs, ruin his day, but don't have a giant day themselves. Braves bats, oddly, probably the bottom of the group here, although that might be different on the stacks board if you math it out. Let me see. Actually, no. Looks like the Cubbies would outrank the Braves given the averages. The Nats against the White Sox. Might be a little bit low given where that run total is. It's just difficult to make the Nats any good projection-wise. This is the 2nd highest run total on the board at 4.9. These hitters just don't grade out that well. Their median projections, even against a bad pitcher like Chris Flexen, just kind of fall by the wayside. So they don't rank out great if we do it by the raw averages. But I think they're a frisky bunch. It's just they'll probably be a little bit popular given that run total and given the pitching matchup here. So it might be one of those ones where you're, all right, we're riding with a bunch of cheap hitters who do end up succeeding, but what have we really gained out of it unless they completely explode? Could definitely completely explode, though. It could be one of those spots where if you don't have them as a value, you're looking up at the field who does, and then it just becomes a matter of, who from the field picked the right expensive team to pair with them at low ownership. Top of the lineup for the Nats, Jacob Young, CJ Abrams, both very interesting. Young, over 105 plate appearances, has stolen 13 bases, getting on at a 350 clip. Not a bad option in the leadoff spot. CJ Abrams, 58-39, correctly priced like a star. 7 home runs, 8 stolen bases, a 243 ISO, 520 slug, creating runs 38% better than average. 8.3% barrels, 40% hard hits is pretty good. striking out at just an 18.3% rate and walking only 6.7%. Both of these guys, that means they're putting the ball in play pretty frequently from the top of the lineup too. Luis Garcia has been very good. He's similar in terms of putting the ball in play. He's been barreling the ball a lot more, generating a lot more hard hit this year. 297, 346, 458, creating runs 29% better than average. Just 3 homers, 7 steals. This team lacks, like, especially with our guy Joey Gallo not in the lineup, this team lacks like that big threatening power bat. If these guys had even somebody inconsistent like Gallo or Giancarlo Stanton, let's say, hitting fourth where Joey Meneses is, it would be a more interesting lineup given how much these guys are putting the ball in play, how much they're getting on base, the fact that they've all got some speed to work with. They just really lack that power bat. This could be a better team if they had that one piece. Meneses just hasn't really delivered. Again, 2 seasons ago, he hit 13 home runs in just 240 plate appearances with a terrific triple slash. Came into last year, had a 239 ISO. Came into last year with some expectations for additional power. Came up with the same 13 home runs in 657. Had just a 126 ISO. Contact fell off the board. You can see 9.9% barrels, 47.1% hard hits in that good 2022. That dipped significantly last year. It stayed around last year's levels. A little bit increase in hard hits, but only 1 home run so far in 153. He's slashing 213, 281, 265, a 58 WRC plus. Hasn't been good. Jesse Winker stuck at 4 home runs, 4 stolen bases. The triple slash is declining around that. Still at a 114 WRC plus, 235, 350, 386. Getting on at a decent clip. Drawing 12.1% walks. He's always walked at a decent level. But fair amount of strikeouts. Not making super premium contact. Wouldn't shock me if Jesse Winker had a good day against Chris Flexen. He's a priority bat from the left side if you're going to this lineup. It's just his overall season numbers have been mediocre. Keibert Ruiz, another player, puts the ball in play a ton. 15.9% strikeouts and just 3.4% walks. Last year that was 10.3 and 5.5. Tons and tons of balls in play. It's just he hasn't been at all successful with them this year. 18 WRC plus over 88 plate appearances. Ouch. Eddie Rosario below the Mendoza line. Ruiz is below the Mendoza line. Victor Robles, if he's in the lineup at the bottom in 15 plate appearances, is below the Mendoza line. There's a lot of weak points at the bottom of this lineup too. That's another issue. Just turning the lineup over, keeping rallies going, so on. It's a little bit of speed from these guys. Eddie Rosario, that's actually a surprising stolen base total. 5 home runs, but 174, 252, 370. Not that good. Did bust out for power a little bit over the last couple of weeks. Maybe some upside still for Rosario. He's very, very cheap if you're stacking this team. He is a lefty bat against Chris Flexen. 5.36 in the home run model. Robles, mostly here for speed. Lipscomb, mostly providing speed so far. Neither one is all that much of a priority. The White Sox bats against Trevor Williams.
I'm having trouble understanding right now.
Nobody's talking to you, Alexa.
Try a little later.
Okay, she's done. So Williams isn't a good pitcher overall. You can see Stuff Plus obviously doesn't like him at all, but he hasn't given up a home run in 7 starts. Just 4% barrels, a reasonably low launch angle at 11.5 degrees. 1.96 ERA. He's been successful at limiting runs. 3.79 xFIP is significantly higher, but that's not completely awful. That's just, kind of who he is. 1.06 whip is terrific. 21.1% strikeouts, even with just an 8% swinging strike rate. 25.8% CSW. Against a really bad White Sox team, he's kind of on the board. Last year, he had a 5.55 ERA, a 5.22 xFIP, just a 16.8% strikeout rate. He's outperforming those numbers significantly. He was atrocious for premium contact and home runs last year. He was okay at it the year before. 3.21 ERA, 3.93 xFIP, 22.6%. He's looking more like this guy. That was a small sample performance, but he's looking more like this so far this year. 73 on DraftKings he's on the value board. 21.4% strikeout rate for this White Sox lineup. Tommy Pham, Gavin Sheets, Andrew Vaughn, Eloy Jimenez. Those are your priority bats if you're going to the White Sox. You do have Paul DeJong, who seems to be catching on a little bit for the season. He's got 6 home runs in 116 plate appearances from down here in the lineup. 229 ISO. He's created runs 17% better than average. Squaring the ball or barreling the ball. Solid hard hit rate. Looking like the old Paul DeJong a little bit. So maybe the last interesting part in the lineup. Nicky Lopez, who we were talking about at the top of the show on that StatCast board, just for the interesting frequency with which he squares up the ball. You can see, and this is why we don't like Nicky Lopez mostly, 204, 277, 222, a 49 WRC plus. It's resulted in 1% barrels and 17.7% hard hits. But dude does put the ball in play. 13% strikeouts, 8.1% walks. So again, it would be more of an option if he was hitting up here and you were like super compelled to go to the White Sox as a value option today. From the bottom of the lineup, that doesn't play nearly as interestingly. And again, he's gotten like no results from all that contact. Pham has 2 homers and a stolen base. Creating runs 25% better than average since joining the team 62 plate appearances ago. He's a good player. No questions about him. The price is right at $38.31. Gavin Sheets, 3 homers, a stolen base, a 119 WRC plus. Everything's kind of declining from where it was a couple of weeks ago as he's not had any more output. No home runs in the last few days that I can remember. Vaughn's just been bad. Jimenez does have monster power. 4 home runs on the season and 115 plate appearances, just a 142 ISO, despite excellent premium contact. Doesn't strike out that much for a power bat. Just as I was saying the other day, seems to just go through those stretches where his timing's off just from missing so much time. But 3,900, 2,900, 10.16 in the home run model. One of the better pure contact options in the league for power upsides. So he's always at least frisky. Benintendi in the middle of the lineup has been just atrocious, not doing the things that they're paying him to do. And he doesn't do that much other than that. Brian Ramos, Martin Maldonado at the bottom of the lineup. Mix and match options at best against a mediocre pitcher who's pitching over his head. But again, not uninteresting for Trevor Williams at 73. I guess I skipped over Flexen, but kind of for good reason. 17.1% strikeouts, 8.9% hard hits. Giving up a fair amount of home runs, despite not egregiously bad premium contact. Walks too many, doesn't generate any swinging strikes, bad CSW, and nearly half of the league average by Stuff Plus. So he's just throwing batting practice up there a lot of days. It's oddly been successful for earned runs. I mean, despite the 4.29 ERA in his last... Where's that coming from? He gave up 4, 3, and 6 in his first 3 games. But then he gave up no earned runs, 1 earned run, no earned runs, 2 earned runs, and 1 earned run in his last 5 starts. He struck out 8 against the Rays at Tampa Bay in his most recent outing. Gave up 1 earned on 3 hits, 6 innings. One of those was a 2 1/3 inning start. Another was a 4 inning start. Oh, those are both relief performances. That's what it was. Bulk reliever in those 2 games. So shorter starts, that 1 earned run stood out a little bit more. A 2 2/3 inning start where he gave up the 6 earned. So yeah, the lack of innings against the early earned runs. But the point there is he's gotten through some games with limiting earned runs, but I think that's just more deceptive than anything else. 4.89 xFIP. Limited success in years past. I think we have plenty of evidence on our side that Chris Flexen is not very good. So the Nats bats are a yes, despite, kind of being a little bit limited by projections and probably also by popularity, but they are very cheap. They're easy enough to get to. They're in the mix for the upper end of the value stacks. The White Sox, really, really limited, but Trevor Williams, again, not that great. So I think you can get away with stacking White Sox. It's just there's so many better spots on the board. And then Flexen's just a hard no. I do like him in Agamamba. I'm not on the fence. I do like him. 3rd highest projected starter. I don't know how far back that question's going. Like 15 minutes ago. Yeah, sorry if it sounded like I was wavering there. It's just, there is a healthy respect for the Braves, even with the current season numbers and even with no Riley. But I think Imanaga has more than enough to beat them, to put up a solid strikeout game. There are plenty of gettable strikeouts in that Braves lineup. So I like Imanaga a lot. He's actually in my placeholder lineup right now. Mitch Keller on the mound for the Pirates, 9,200, 9,000, just kind of projects out in the middle of the board against a productive enough Brewers team. I do think this is a Brewers team that's just kind of in the mid-level, but like the upper middle of the league, and they are creating runs. They're doing interesting things with a little bit of power, a lot of speed up and down the lineup. Just seems like one of those spots where Mitch gets nailed. 4.41 ERA on the season, a 3.83 xFIP, just a 21.6% strikeout rate on 8.6% swinging. That's down from 25.5 last year in a good season, 9.7% swinging. Had a 4.21 ERA and a 3.70 xFIP last year. He's not terrible for power most seasons. Limits launch angle somewhat effectively. These are decent to good mid-range, or good launch angles. Decent results for home runs allowed. Stuff plus, right on the line. We'll give him the 100. We'll call that league average. But he's just so shaky. 1 earned run in his last start. He had a complete game. 5 strikeouts. Walked 1, gave up a solo homer. 5 total hits against the Angels. Terrific start. Start before that, he faced the Athletics in Oakland. You would think similarly weak opponent. Struck out 7, walked 2, but gave up a homer, 3 earned runs on 5 hits. Not a bad start, but only 5 innings. Game before that against this same Milwaukee team, went just 5. Struck out 7, walked 2, gave up a homer, 4 earned runs on 6 hits. He's given up a home run in each of his last 5 starts. So again, not ungettable for power upside, but typically does limit home runs a little bit better than that. The depth is back and forth. He's got a few 6 and 7 inning starts, plus the complete game one run game. But he's also got a couple just 5 inning starts, 5 1/3, 5 2/3, where he falls short. Despite only giving up 4 runs, he hasn't given up more than 4 earned, but he's given up 4 earned 4 times. Very Mitch Keller-like results. I think he projects out like a Mitch Keller spot. If he manages to get through, give you those 6 innings, book the quality start, give it maybe 2-3 runs instead of 4, find 7-8 strikeouts. It's a good day. But at 9,000 against where everybody else is priced and projected, he's here. There's a lot of other options for better prices. So just a weird fit. Colin Ray, I think, is a target for bats. 15.1% strikeout rate, a 3.29 ERA, but a 4.58 xFIP is more revealing. 10.9% barrels allowed in 38 1/3, 7 starts this season. It's just resulted in 3.01% home runs. But last year he was more gettable for home runs. We were targeting him through all of these 22 starts. 4.45% home run rate allowed. 21.3% strikeout rate was definitely better. And he did get us a couple times in those 22 outings. Had a few decent starts with a decent strikeout total. But overall, a below average pitcher who I think is super targetable, and he gives up a ton to left-handed bats. And the Pirates, we'll see if we've got the confirmed lineup, because I think this might be an important one. We do, huzzah. So the Pirates have a few interesting left-handed bats, and they're all in the lineup, which is terrific. Brian Reynolds is a switch hitter, so we can get him lefty. He's only got 4 home runs, 2 steals, but he's creating runs 4% better than average, getting on an okay clip. The premium contact is down a little bit, but he's a terrific player overall. He's still drawing a bunch of walks, not striking out that much. Andrew McCutchen in the leadoff spot, a long career of getting on base more effectively than .310. He's only creating runs 14% worse than average, below the Mendoza line. Not Andrew McCutchen type results there, but look at the premium contact. In a limited sample of batted ball events, surely, but still 17.8% barrels, 45.2% hard hits, just 4 home runs, a stolen base, just a 136 ISO. The results haven't been as good as the contact, but that's not uninteresting against a bad pitcher who's totally gettable for premium contact. He's cheap too, 42.28, easy enough to bolt on to mid lineup stacks. O'Neill Cruz, the home run pick of the day at 11.13, leads the team. One of those very interesting left-handed hitters in this lineup. He strikes out a ton still, but Colin Ray is not really striking anybody out, so call that a wash. If that's a tie, then I like the upside for O'Neill Cruz. 265, 312, 449, not a bad triple slash. Just a 184 ISO, but he's got 7 home runs in that, 3 steals, creating runs 12% better than average. I'll take it. The premium contact has been terrific this year. 11.5% barrels, 52.1% hard hits. Looks a lot like the guy from 2 years ago. Definitely interested. 4,500, 3,000. Looks like a killer spot. I think he's got a little popularity on him. This is not a secret from anybody that the Pirates lefties look decent in this spot. They'll be popular just like the Nats probably will. But maybe less so, just given that low run total, that oddly low run total here. I'm going to check that again. Let's see if that line moved. It just seems so low to me going up against this pitcher. The Pirates haven't been good this season, like as a team, but if yeah, it's 127 minus 138 now. So there would be we're talking about like the back end of these gigantic decimals here. It's just a weirdly low run total. So maybe it cuts the ownership. As an individual, I think O'Neal Cruz will be very popular, given where he's priced and what his home runs and projections look like probably all around the industry. But maybe you get discounts in ownership for the spot on a Jack Suwinski, let's say. Suwinski's been bad. 129 plate appearances, just 2 home runs, 3 stolen bases, creating runs 49% worse than average, just a .096 ISO. Contact is way, way down for a guy who made very good contact last year. 5.8% barrels, 36% hard hits, down from 15.7 and 43.4. Last year, he had 26 home runs in 534 plate appearances. He had a 230 ISO. Year before, 19 in 372 with a 209 ISO. Could be a very, very strong get-right spot for Jack Suwinski here. Nick Gonzalez, 2,700, 2,200. Price is right, I guess, in the middle of the lineup as a righty. 128 plate appearances last year, just 209, 268, 348, 64 WRC plus, 2 home runs. No barrels in the small sample. It's only, let's call it 3.7% barrels last year in that better sample, 26.8% hard hits. Try to take a look real quick. 14 homers in AAA in 2023 for this team. It's all right. 281, 379, 507. That's a little bit more interesting. 225 ISO. Walked 12%. Struck out 26.6. Reasonable enough. I can't imagine that Nick Gonzalez is going to get popular here at 2,700, 2,200. If you're stacking Pirates, that's not a bad option at second base. We just don't have a great sample in the majors, but seems like enough of a player against this pitcher. Rowdy Tellez, another one of those big lefty bats in this lineup. 44% hard hits so far this year in 114. It's resulted in just a 186, 263, 245 with a .059 ISO and only 1 home run. Rowdy Tellez is a better left-handed power bat than that. Last year, just 13 homers in 351. Don't make a liar out of me, Rowdy. 35 home runs in 599 2 years ago. That's the player we're looking for. Another guy, maybe a good get-right spot for Rowdy Tellez here. 9.60 in the home run model for him. Above the magic number for those 3 guys, Reynolds, Cruz, and Suwinski. Bottom of the lineup, Jared Triolo, capable of getting finding a hit here or there and getting involved as a correlated scoring play. Hasn't been doing much of that this season, part of their problems. Jasmani Grandal in here just to catch some of these young pitchers. In years past, he was a very strong option for on-base percentage, but we're beyond where those are even on the board here, so it's not the last couple of years. Hasn't been the same hitter in recent memory. Michael Taylor, not giving us what we want from the bottom of the lineup over 106, but still definitely an interesting player. 9.8% barrels, had a tremendous barrel rate last year, hit us 21 home runs and stole 13 bases from the bottom of the lineup last year in 388. Never somebody I'm going to cross off my list of interesting bottom of the lineup hitters that are limited. You know, the ceiling is always capped by limited plate appearances at the bottom, but he's frisky for those prices. 25, 26. Would not shock me if Michael Taylor found a home run against Colin Ray. If you're going to the Brewers against Keller, which I think is totally doable, Bryce Turang from the top of the lineup has 16 stolen bases. He's slashing 301, 365, 421. Terrific start to the year for Turang, who was a highly regarded kid coming up. Last year, he bounced up and down a little bit. Finished with 6 home runs, 26 steals, but a bad triple slash, 40% worse than average creating runs. But has kind of put things together so far this year. Another one of those guys, just, not a lot of hard hits or barrels in there, but putting a ton of balls in play. Just 12.8% strikeouts. Made some major leaps in just 149 plate appearances. If he keeps it up, he's an interesting player all year. William Contreras, we saw him at the top of those StatCast boards in terms of squaring the ball up. You can see that. It's not a secret. Again, 61% hard hits. A lot of that was just affirming some of the things we already knew were going on, but it's a cool new way to look at it. 19.2% strikeouts, draws a bunch of walks. One of the top hitting catchers in the sport. 5,600, 4,000 is correct across sites. Totally playable as a one-off for an expensive price. Definitely playable in Brewer stacks against Mitch Keller. Christian Yelich, 53.39, another tremendous contact option. 364, 435, 691, crushing the ball when he makes contact, 5 home runs. It's only 63 plate appearances. He missed some time, but a very high-end player who I'll continue to harp on it. He was never as bad as everybody threw up their hands and what happened to Christian Yelich. The premium contact's always been there. It's just the home run totals fell off a little bit, but he's a terrific player. Adames, 46-36. Playable. 7 home runs, 7 steals, a 200 ISO. We're cooling off a little bit already, but he's been very, very good, and the price hasn't really gone up around him. He's been a good power bat over time. A lot more premium contact even than he's made so far this year. Rhys Hoskins is up to 9 home runs, looking a lot like Rhys Hoskins of old. 242 ISO, 16% barrels. Sal Frelick, more of a contact guy, 3,700, 2,800, a little bit of speed. Joey Ortiz, a little bit of power, 3 home runs on the season, a 202 ISO in 99 plate appearances. It's pretty decent. Creating runs 30% better than average, and there's maybe a little bit more premium contact available for him. This was very small sample, though. Blake Perkins, we saw him at the top of that list, too. Making really good contact this year. 4 home runs, 3 stolen bases, a 139 ISO, 98 WRC+. The results have been mixed, but the contact has been very interesting. 26.5% strikeouts, 10.6% walks. When he's putting bat on ball, he's been effective over 3,900, 2,900. Not a bad price. Jackson Chourio sat, I think, 3 or 4 games in a row last week and might be in danger of going down to AAA, which would really screw things up for the Dynasty team. But he's been bad so far. 69 WRC+, striking out at a 28.3% clip. 4 home runs, 6 stolen bases, kept them alive a little bit, but it's been rough for a kid that's supposed to be a star. Pirates bats, for me, are a big, big yes. Brewers bats definitely in play. Mitch Keller, if you want to, but I think just given where he's priced and given where everybody else is on the board, he's just, lower middle. Right here. That's kind of where I consider Mitch Keller in this spot. And Colin Ray's a hard no. Guardians and the Rangers. Tejas. Looks like we got a bunch of these now. Although not the Guardians. Tanner Bybee, interesting starting point. Just went 4 in his last start. Gave up 4 earned runs in that one. 5 innings against the Angels. That was against Detroit. And then 5 innings against the Angels. Gave up 6 earned on 8 hits. Couple rough ones in a row there. Especially that Angels one. We were looking hard at Tanner Bybee that day, and he really let us down. That one was coming off a 7-inning start at Atlanta in which he struck out 9, gave up just 2 hits, no earned runs. Had been a little bit up and down in starts prior to that this season. 5 2/3 against Oakland, struck out 8, but gave up 2 earned runs, a homer, 5 hits. Just 1 earned run over 5 against Boston, but only struck out 3, walked 2. Only struck out 2 and walked 3 over 4 1/3 and gave up 5 earned runs on 6 hits against the White Sox on the 10th. That was another game where we were definitely at him, definitely targeting him. So he's been decent to very good against some good teams, and he's been kind of mediocre against some bad teams this year. By that math, this should be a good start for him, but that's certainly not something we want to rely on. What I do think is interesting is the 84-83. He's effectively priced for a guy who does, get good recognition by Stuff Plus with an above-average arsenal. Does have a 25.3% strikeout rate despite some scuffles. 11.6% swinging strikes is very good. She's gotten dinged for some power so far this year. 11.3% barrels is high. 3.45% home runs. You can see that was a lot better last year. Could be some happenstance in there. Is actually striking out. Actually striking out a few more so far this year. 25.3 up from 24.1. 11.6 is up a little bit in swinging strikes. So there are actually a couple positive signs despite some blips overall. It's just the Rangers are very, very good on the other side of the lineup. I don't usually try and target them. I do think you'll get an effectively priced, low-owned Bybee, and if we're considering Imanaga against the Braves at a much higher price. Bybee is firmly, at least on DraftKings, in this mid-range of guys, which actually starts like down here. On FanDuel for 83, I don't think it's unplayable across a big pool of lineups. Definitely wouldn't be my choice if I'm building 1, 3, 5. Maybe I've got him in 1 or 2 if I'm building 20. If I'm building out 150, I think there's enough room to grab a little bit of a share, considering I expect he would be pretty low owned here. I would definitely hedge with some Rangers bats if I did that. But again, that's more of a full slate, 150 lineups kind of play. The Guardians definitely could be frisky against Michael Lorenzen here. 19.2% strikeouts plus an 11.7% walk rate. Not a good matchup for what this team does. 4.66 ERA, 4.52 xFIP. He's given up some premium contact and power. More in the hard hit sense than the barrels. The launch angle hasn't been awful, but the home runs have been there. Same thing last year. Had a 4.18 ERA, a 4.68 xFIP with a 17.8% strikeout rate. There's not a lot of punch outs here against a pretty low strikeout team. We got to skip Manzardo. Not that, again, when I skip these guys, I think everybody knows it's just kind of correct the sample for the full team numbers. Obviously, Manzardo's in there at 41.2% strikeouts so far in a 17 plate appearance sample. It's going to be part of it. But looking at the guys with a little bit more of a complete sample so far this year, puts it at 20.6, not 22.9. And we know that the entire top of the lineup, the first 5 hitters, are at 14.4% strikeouts. This could be problematic for Michael Lorenzen. Within that, Tyler Freeman is just at 184, 277, 333. He's created runs 22% worse than average. 4 home runs, 4 steals, and 131. The results haven't been great, but he does put the ball in play a lot. He does hit it fairly hard. I actually dropped him for Orlando Arcia as a middle infielder in the Dynasty League this week, just as a replacement player for an injured player. But I think he's a capable enough guy. If he's in that leadoff spot, continuing to fill in up there for Stephen Kwan, who is a much more interesting hitter. He's playable at 33, 3,000. 52, 3,000 for Andres Jimenez. Probably not expensive enough on the FanDuel slate. 52 is a fair price on DraftKings. 242, 307, 342. He's been 9% worse than average for run creation. 2 home runs, 5 steals. But frisky enough with an excellent spot in the lineup and puts the ball in play a lot. 15% strikeouts, 4.8% walks. I'm holding my coffee cup in this hand, and I just took this hand and reached over to where the coffee cup usually is. Whew. Continuing down the lineup to the actually good players, Jose Ramirez, Josh Naylor. Ramirez hasn't been great this year. 9 home runs, 5 steals, but a 235, 284, 51 is way off the mark. Still a 216 ISO, still creating runs 4% better than average. Naylor's been 56% better than average creating runs. He's got 11 home runs, 275, 356, 563. He's been terrific this year. 54.38, you still got him at a pretty fair price. Brennan at 36.26, 4 home runs, 2 steals, 96 WRC plus, but a capable enough bat. Last year, he put up 5 home runs, 13 stolen bases, and 455, slash 266, 299, 356, was just at 81 WRC plus. Maybe a little bit less capable. I like the contact he's made so far this year. Looks more like 2 years ago. The low strikeouts, the balls in play are great. Just hasn't seen great results for the things that he does. But I think the things that he does for these prices in a stack are interesting. Not a player I really look at as a significant one-off. Bo Naylor, a little bit of catcher power, just 3 home runs on the season, but good contact. 182, 270, 283. Another guy should be better than the results, or the results should be better than they are, given what he does in the long term. Manzardo, premium prospect, off to a shaky start. 176, 235. No home runs, no runs, no RBIs or stolen bases in his 17 plate appearances, but was tremendous in AAA so far this year. Esteban Florial, a mix and match piece. Hasn't been good this season. Does have 3 homers, 2 steals, a 225 ISO. Making very good contact, but not at all reliable. 38.6% strikeouts. If you're building a bunch of Guardian stacks, he should go into some of them, though, for sure, especially if he's higher up in the lineup. Brian Rocchio, 27-25, back to his correct spot at the bottom of the lineup. There were a few days where he led off last week. Not a strong play if he's back in the leadoff spot. outside of just, odd correlated scoring, but just hasn't been good, mostly here for defense. The Rangers with the confirmed lineup going up against Tanner Bybee. Semien, Seager, Lowe, Garcia, all big yeses on any given slate. That said, Bybee is a very talented pitcher. So this is a deprioritized stack for me, but those are my 4 priority hitters from this lineup if I'm going to this team. Semien has 7 home runs, 285, 332, 464. His created runs 24% better than average. Seager's been rough. He's up to 10.7% barrels, but that's down from 15.2%. He's only got 4 home runs, pretty bad triple slash, 14% worse than average creating runs. That's got his price down at 54.35. That's pretty effective for Corey Seager. Nathaniel Lowe, still really cheap, 44.31. I've talked about this guy enough over the last 92 plate appearances. He's slashing 303, 424, 408. He's a terrific correlated scoring play from the heart of that lineup for a cheap price. You can absolutely play him at first base. He's got a little bit of power upside beyond what he's shown so far. Really like the option for the cheap price. 57.39 for Adolis Garcia is effective. 8 home runs, 4 steals, 208 ISO, 111 WRC plus, monster premium contact. Love Garcia. He dipped a little bit over the last couple of weeks. Last 10 days maybe. But it's just a blip. He'll be fine. Josh H. Smith is cooling off a little bit, still getting on base, still creating runs at a 40% better than average clip, but was producing a little bit better. Hasn't given us any kind of premium contact. Does not really strike out that much and does draw walks. Keeps the on-base percentage up. A moderate option from the middle of the lineup. He's fairly priced at $4,200 with multi-position. Jonah Heim, a lot of catcher power for 45.31. 4 home runs on the season, a very strong triple slash, 111 WRC plus. From the bottom of the lineup, Travis Jankowski, a little bit interesting. A cheap lefty bat to throw into the mix. He's got a little bit of stolen base upside. Swiped 19 bags in 287 plate appearances last year. A mix and match play. Ezekiel Duran, definitely a mix and match play. 4 positions for 2,300 on FanDuel is always going to be interesting. 310, 372, 338 over 78 plate appearances this year. Creating runs 7% better than average despite no power output. Just 1 stolen base. Last year, he was at 276, 324, 443 with a 107 WRC plus, 14 homers, 8 steals in just 439. Not an uninteresting bat given the flexibility. Leody Taveras, 14 homers, 14 steals last year. He's got 3 and 4 this year. Back up to a 106 WRC plus, so he's kind of been interesting, correcting his stat line that he was off to a rough start over the first 3 weeks. I guess over the last 3 or 4 weeks he's been a little bit better. Bybee is a moderate yes at a very, very playable price. That's a discount for that pitcher, even against the Rangers. It's just there are a lot of good options on the board for pitching today against worse teams. Lorenzen's a no. Guardians bats are a yes. Rangers bats a light yes. Lighter than normal yes for the Rangers just because of the matchup against Bybee. But they could definitely get him here. And they're probably not going to be that popular. The A's, the Astros. Another spot. Let's check. We got both these lineups. Perfect. While we're here taking a second, hit the like button if you haven't. If you're new here, subscribe and definitely check out rotoscouts.com for all your free projections. They'll be updated after the show. You've got your home run picks, top stacks, power index. All those things are up on the site for free. Check out acemind.io, our sim partners. They got a sim, they got an optimizer. Promo code rotoscouts all in caps gets you 20% off your first month over there, and your first 3 days with them are always for free. Spencer Arrighetti, 7,200, 7,300. That's not an uninteresting price for a guy who's striking out 23.6% over his first couple of games. It's just the 8.44 ERA is a little concerning with a 4.48 xFIP that doesn't make me feel that much better. The significantly below average stuff plus rating so far on a small sample isn't that good. He went against some really stiff competition. At Kansas City to start, struck out 3, gave up 7 earned runs. That's going to hurt your ERA in just 3 innings. Next start faced Atlanta, another tough opponent. 5 strikeouts, 2 walks. Gave up just 2 earned on 4 hits, but only lasted 4 innings. 7 strikeouts with 2 walks against the Cubs at Chicago in Wrigley. 3 2/3. That's a big strikeout total for just 3 2/3, but he gave up 4 earned runs on 7 hits. The only homer he gave up of the season was in that game. 6 strikeouts in 5 2/3 against Cleveland is kind of an accomplishment. 3 walks, just 2 earned runs, 4 hits. That was his best start of the season. A 4 strikeout game with 3 walks, but he allowed 3 home runs and 5 earned runs on 8 hits to the Yankees at Yankee Stadium in his most recent start. At worst, you're getting a pitcher who has interesting strikeout ability. I think he has better stuff than what Stuff Plus is showing right now. And he's going up against the A's. You're getting some good home run marks on this side because he's given up some power. But I think we're getting, if nothing else, he's getting a little bit of a reprieve today after facing all those good teams. Maybe this is the spot where Arrighetti shines. The price is very, very good to find out against one of the worst lineups in baseball. I would probably hedge. If I'm building 150 lineups, I would definitely have some Oakland in there. It would start with Brent Rooker at 10.39 in the home run model. I would want Shea Langoliers with that. Maybe some, on draft. Oh, yeah, you can. Catcher and first base for Soderstrom. So you can get Soderstrom and Shea Langoliers in the same lineup. Seth Brown from the left side at just 28.24. He's got an 8.06 in the home run model. He hasn't been good over 109 plate appearances. 3 homers, a 119 ISO, a 58 WRC plus below the Mendoza line. Langoliers is hovering just above the Mendoza line, but he makes tremendous contact. He's turned it into 9 home runs and 135 plate appearances. He's been really good this year. Not consistent, but high end. 295 ISO, a 114 WRC plus. He was a lot more sneaky last year. People know about him more this year. The price is still very good at $3,800 where you need to play catchers, though. Rooker for just $4,000, $3,300. Another guy, not the model of consistency, but he's got 10 home runs, 292, 380, 632, a 340 ISO, creating runs 87% better than average. We saw this same production from Brent Rooker early last season, and I was not on board, and still a lot of swing and miss, but he's slightly improved some of that in-zone swing and miss so far this year, and he's been on a tear over the last 6 weeks. The fact that his price hasn't gone up is kind of interesting. $4,000 is very cheap for Brent Rooker on DraftKings. Abraham Toro's off to a good start. He's created runs 37% better than average. He's got 4 home runs, a stolen base, 299, 351, 460. JJ Bleday, 5 home runs, still creating runs above average at 122 WRC plus over 159 plate appearances. Not great premium contact from those 2 guys at the top of the lineup. But they don't strike out that much, which kind of defies what the rest of this team is doing. They're in play. You get triple position out of Abraham Toro for just 27 on FanDuel. 3,600 at second base. At least he's in the right position on DraftKings. Bottom of the lineup with Schumann, Butler, and Brett Harris. Just mix and match playable parts. You got a couple above average run creation marks here. Small sample in 42 and 58 plate appearances, though. Nobody hitting for average. Nobody really getting on base that well. I guess Harris at 333 is all right. He has a 281 ISO, 3 home runs. But these, top 6 hitters are not completely uninteresting against this pitcher, at least as a hedge. I think you can definitely look at it as a value spot, too. A's ranked out just stacks-wise kind of in the middle of the board with a very strong value number. Like for comparison's sake, you can see this is the average for all 9 hitters. This is the average for the top 7 or 8. But you can see this is our value equation. These are the value marks. So 2.03 value total on FanDuel, 1.18 on DraftKings. By comparison, on the other side, the more expensive but much, much better Astros, better overall totals for the average projection, but not by a huge margin, and significantly lower in those value numbers. So they're definitely a priority as a hedge if you roster Arrighetti for a cheap price, and I do think he's on the board. They are playable as a one-off team, or as not a one-off team, as a value team. And I think there are interesting one-offs in this lineup as well, if you're not rostering Arrighetti in the opposing side. Brent Rooker, for example, interesting one-off. The fact that Langoliers is only 3,800 where you have to play catchers makes him a very interesting one-off. Not a dead team. Some decent run creation marks in there, too. These guys have regular plate appearances, not huge samples, but regular plate appearances, and they're at an average WRC plus of 140. It's interesting enough. On the other side, one of the top home run hitting teams of the day the Houston Astros against Ross Stripling. Stripling, a below-average pitcher, 5.14 ERA, a 4.18 xFIP. That is better than the ERA, but we'll see how that comes out at the end of the year. 15.3% strikeouts is pretty low end. Walking just 5.3%, keeping him alive a little bit, but a 1.57 whip is not at all effective given that walk rate. Hasn't given up a ton of barrels, not a lot of hard hits or exit velo, 2.12% home runs. Not terrible for home runs so far this year, but last year, that was an issue. Year before, it looked a little bit more like this year, but you can see the barrels were way higher, hard hits were higher, exit velo was a little bit higher. So it seems like maybe a little bit more happenstance in this year and probably a little bit of happenstance early this year. Stuff Plus doesn't like him at all, just 8.9% swinging, 26.1% CSW. I don't play Ross Stripling here at 62, 68, not against the Astros. And I definitely want to stack up some Astros, especially with some of these guys at reduced pricing. 57.38 is a little bit cheap for Jose Altuve. He's got 7 home runs, 7 stolen bases, a 152 WRC plus. Kyle Tucker, one of the league leaders with 13 home runs. He's got 6 stolen bases. He's got a monster 319 ISO. We saw Alvarez and Tucker were both in the top 11 next to each other on that StatCast board we were looking at earlier. Tremendous hitter, 14% barrels, 51.8% hard hits. Alvarez is down a little bit this season, 14% barrels, 47.3% hard hits, down from 18 and 52.2 last year. Still does have 8 home runs, a 192 ISO, 122 WRC plus. Still is one of easily the best hitters in baseball. 16.5% strikeouts, putting a ton of balls in play. Little bit of bad luck so far this season for Alvarez, but his price is down, 5,500, 3,700. That is shockingly reasonable for a player of that quality. Jeremy Pena, 4,400, 3,200. The price really hasn't moved despite some good production so far this year. 340, 384, 471, creating runs 48% better than average, hitting for a little bit more power. 4 home runs, 6 steals, pretty solid 40.9% hard hit rate. Not striking out all that badly. Sorry, that was the wrong number I was looking at. I was looking at that one. He's at 12.8% this year with a low walk rate. So again, that equals a lot of well-struck balls in play. It's really all we're looking for in a lot of time, in a lot of spots, especially with these, well, not necessarily from a cleanup hitter, but especially I was going to say with, 5-6 type hitters or like higher in the lineup hitters. We're looking for frequency of contact and well-struck balls in a lot of cases, and then we find our big power bats to go with those guys. But when you're looking for, all right, Alvarez and Tucker are easy. Those guys hit a ton of home runs. Altuve's pretty easy. Who's my next best man in? It's probably Pena at this point. Singleton, maybe making an argument given the cheap pricing at 3,200, 2,600. I don't know how many times I want him at first base, though. He does have 4 home runs, a 111 WRC plus, a little bit effective there. 8.1% barrels, 41.9% hard hits in the small sample. There's not much to argue with. It's just over time, he's more of a quad A journeyman type. Not a high priority, but you can absolutely see success against this pitcher. 7.23 from the left side of the plate in the home run model. Totally interesting. Would be a priority, or would be a not insignificant part of 2025 Astros stacks. He's in 10 of them. Just not the top priority bat in this lineup. There's 4 better bats. Alex Bregman would be the 5th better bat if he was doing anything like the old Alex Bregman. Right now, 201, 270, 264, a 57 WRC plus, not making any kind of contact. He's been as lost as some of those Cardinals hitters. Jainer Diaz, 278, 312, 403, creating runs 4% better than average. Definitely a playable part as a catcher, still making very good contact. It's just cooled off a little bit. Might be a blip, might be a little bit of a downswing for a couple of weeks, and then he comes surging back. 9.21 in the home run model. Definitely a good spot to find out. Another guy doesn't strike out, doesn't walk that much, so a lot of balls in play. Victor Caratini, totally skippable as a catcher, but does have a little bit of that odd power upside. So as the catcher in this lineup that nobody's going to play, he's not completely dead. 2 home runs in 53 plate appearances with a 184 ISO, 51.2% hard hits. Again, this is a very, very small sample of batted ball events. Last year, 5% barrels, 44.7% hard hits in 226 plate appearances. That resulted in 7 home runs, just a 124 ISO. You're just cheap home run hunting with Victor Caratini if you play him. 9 home runs in 314 the year before, but again, bad triple slash numbers that year. So know what you're getting, but if you build 20 Astros stacks, and let's say you wanted your catcher from every single one of those 20 for some reason, Jainer Diaz is probably in at least 15 of them, if not more. 5 Caratinis. Some kind of a ratio somewhere around there, I think is appropriate. But you can get a cheapo, consider him like Martin Maldonado of old that used to be at the bottom of this lineup. Maybe a little bit better. Jake Myers, mix and match part with a little bit of productivity at 213 ISO, 3 home runs, pretty good contact. Not a bad option from the 9th spot in the lineup. So, Arrighetti and the Athletics are simultaneously with about the same level of enthusiasm on the value board at their respective positions. Top 6 hitters are definitely interesting in that Athletics lineup. If I had to choose, I would probably take that side in the head-to-head. Fortunately, you don't have to choose. You can skip them both. You can play them both. But Arrighetti, given the strikeout stuff that he's shown in some small inning samples, is not completely terrible against this team for that price. Ross Stripling, probably going to be completely terrible against the Astros for that price. Definitely very, very interested in Astros bats in this one. See what you guys are talking about. Holy hell. Don Martino. Don Martino's a fan of the Houston bats. Stack Houston bats. Yordan Alvarez. Kyle Tucker. Look how low he is. Exactly. Alvarez is great for a homer every other game or so. You want my line? Here's what I got for DK. Eflin, Yamamoto, Bo Naylor, Meneses, 100%. I don't know if I love that one. Whit Merrifield, okay. Cole Tucker, O'Neal Cruz, love that. Josh Lowe, Alvarez, and Corbin Carroll. Worked on this line since 8 o'clock this morning. What about Bo? I don't know, man. I like paying low at catcher. Very old strat. Good stuff. Welcome, Don Martino. Appreciate the feedback. Humboldt, what's going on, buddy? Here I am. Did you just find us? Have you been looking for me? I wasn't aware you were looking for me. We've been here all along. Started about a year ago. A little more than a year ago at this point. rotoscouts.com, buddy. Check it out. Cujo's there. Mamba answered his question from like an hour ago. My thoughts about Ricky Lee are that I want to stack Pirates bats against him. He did have, again, a few games last year where he put up a decent strikeout total and managed to avoid the home run trouble. It's been a little bit better so far this year in avoiding home runs, but was bad for it last year. And we're showing some power, and he's very bad against lefties, and there's a few very interesting left-handed power bats in that Pittsburgh lineup. O'Neal Cruz, Jack Sawinski, Rowdy Tellez, Brian Reynolds as a switch hitter. So I greatly prefer the Pittsburgh side. I don't like the Colin Ray option, but I wouldn't call you completely off your rocker if you played it, right? We've seen it enough times, and he is going up against a bad team that does have a sub-4 run total. So Vegas kind of likes it if you're looking for any kind of justification. But I prefer that Pirates lineup. Don Martino, we're independent. Not connected to anybody. We partner a little bit with our guys over at Ace Mine just because they're pals and they're interested. But yeah, not connected to RotoWire, not connected to RotoQL. I used to be with Stochastic Awesemo, but no longer. It's been a little while since that was the case. That's where a lot of these guys know me from, though. But welcome, buddy. I'm glad you're here. What made you think of RotoWire or RotoQL? Just out of curiosity. Oh, the Roto. Duh. Fucking moron. How did I not put that together on my own? Roto Grinders would have been another option. Yeah, but no, I actually have had this website name since, and the Twitter handle since like 2011 or like some crazy far back year like that. But just actually launched the site last year. It was just one of those ones where I parked the URL. Yeah, like if you pull up the Twitter handle, joined in January 2011. That was when I registered Rotoscouts. Had I started it back then, maybe we'd be one of the bigger names in the industry. Right now, we're just kind of doing our thing. Oh, dumber. All right, right on. Worked for both of those two websites at one point in time. Very cool. All right, let's keep this thing rolling. The cards, again, uncomfortably ranking out pretty well on the stacks board. It's not a ton of separation between them and a lot of the other teams at 10.24 average on the projection there. But you can see some of the underperformers at the top of the lineup here drawing pretty significant projections. They're going up against Jose Soriano, 21.9% strikeouts with a ton of 3.2 ERA with a 4.0 xFIP, but decent marks by stuff plus. He's given up a ton of hard hits, fair amount of barrels, a lot of exit velo, but it hasn't resulted in too many home runs because he's inducing just a negative 1.9 degree average launch. That's super interesting. As a reliever last year, that was worse. It was a 6.8 degree average launch, but that's still pretty much ground ball trajectory. Just a 2.16% home run rate with hard hits and barrels. So it looks like just one of those spots where when he does make the mistake, it travels. So if you get the odd mistake, some of these cards could definitely drive the ball. But you can see it is having a little bit of an impact on the home run model. There's nobody over the magic number at 10. We've got Nolan Gorman at 8.87, Goldie at 8.70, and Arenado at 8.63. Out of that group of players, only Arenado is above the Mendoza line. He's at 270, 331, 372, but he's totally struggling for premium contact. 2.4% barrels, 28.2% hard hits. That is not the Nolan Arenado that we know and love. 101 ISO. He's managed to create runs 5% better than average from the middle of the lineup. Everybody around him kind of scuffling. Goldschmidt's been a disaster. 197, 280, 279, a .082 ISO, 66 WRC plus, 3 home runs. Making okay contact, 41.7% hard hits, but the barrels are way off. Strikeouts are up. We might be at the end of the line with Goldie, unfortunately. I still do like him for the turnaround, but I don't know how high even if he does turn it, I don't know how high we're going to ascend. Seeing a lot of you can safely drop Paul Goldschmidt takes around the industry lately, too. Brendan Donovan at the top of the cards lineup, 4,100, 3,000. Love the quad position eligibility for a fair price on FanDuel. 4 home runs, just a 212, 295, 358 triple slash, though. Pretty weak. Forgot to check if this lineup was in. Doesn't look like it is. Alec Burleson for 3,000, 2,400. Okay, fine. Playable part, 258, 294, 392. There's nothing great there. 3 home runs and 103 plate appearances, a 134 ISO, 2% worse than average creating runs. An okay contact profile. He's just a mix and match type talent, but he's fairly priced if he's hitting in the 5 spot or anywhere, in that general range. They had Matt Carpenter lead off the other day. We might go back to that again. In 20 plate appearances, Carpenter 333, 368, 389. I saw that the other day and I had to shake my head and wonder what year it was. But Matt Carpenter back on the cards and potentially leading off. If he's down here, he's been much more of a power bat over the last couple of seasons. He is the dead min at first base on FanDuel. I don't know how many times I want him more than I want Goldie. If he's hitting up here, it's probably more compelling than down here. This is a better RBI spot, though, but you get more plate appearance opportunity up there. I haven't really been on the Carpenter bandwagon these last couple of seasons where he's had those odd power games. But if you wanted to roll the dice, if you're building a bunch of card stacks especially, he's definitely on the board, and he's very, very cheap. Ivan Herrera, 12.5% barrels in a small sample of 89 plate appearances. Decent triple slash, 3 home runs. Frisky catcher, very, very cheap. Gorman for 34.28. For a guy who had 27 home runs last year, had a 241 ISO, known to be a power bat, it's a fair price. It's just he's been really bad. He lost his place higher up in the lineup. But at any given slate, against a pitcher like this who is limiting home runs, but doing so in, with mistakes mixed in there, he's not unplayable. Mason Wynn has been decent, but not great to start the season. So there's a lot of mix and match quality. They're all at cheap to playable to fair prices, because of the struggles. I just have a real hard time telling you guys to go play cards with how many times they've burnt me specifically recently, how bad they've been. They've been one of the worst run scoring teams in baseball. They haven't hit for any kind of power this year. You can see 5 home runs is the high point for Gorman. It's been rough, but they are projecting out well for fair prices. They're on the board. On the other side, the Angels, really tough lineup to like. They are going against Matthew Liberatore, which could give them a little bit of upside. He's only made 1 start, 20 and a third. I don't know that we're expecting all that much depth out of Liberatore. Let's see what we've gotten innings-wise. He did go 3 2/3 in that start, 5 strikeouts. Projection might actually be a little bit high. I might have to pull that back. I think I just gave him 4.5, which is like the default low. But that might be more of a, maybe I cut it to 4. Since he pitched into the 4th inning there, he struck out 5, walked none, gave up 1 earned on 3 hits, faced 14 hitters. Had a 3-inning bulk relief performance. He hasn't gone more than that 3 2/3. Last time out was on the 10th. That was just 3 days ago too. He only faced 4 hitters through a third of an inning, gave up 2 earned runs and a strikeout. I'm going to cut that projection. I need to remind myself to do that. Yeah, I'll remember. I thought I saw a pen. Yeah, this is too high. I don't think he's going to give us the depth, even against a bad Angels lineup. I don't know how much I want them on the other side, even if it's a Liberatore and then into the bullpen kind of a spot, though. They're just not that good. Shanuel has been putting good bat on ball, as we saw. Another one of those, low barrel, low hard hits, but a lot of squaring up of the ball. It's just another one, kind of like Nicky Lopez, where that hasn't really resulted in any kind of results. Resulted in results. Well said. That hasn't resulted in any kind of production. Cole Tucker from the second spot, 2,600 across sites, 32 plate appearances. It's, as I've said it in a couple of shows recently, it's a team that's largely comprised of a lot of guys that were supposed to be something and haven't quite been yet. One of those guys is Joe Adell down here. He's up to 7 home runs and 7 steals. He's been super productive in 105 plate appearances. Should probably be hitting somewhere up here, like where Kevin Pillar is, maybe. I think we know Kevin Pillar is not a major league caliber cleanup hitter. That said, in 53 plate appearances, he's got 3 homers and a 304 ISO. I promise you that's going to cool. Taylor Ward, probably their best bat right now. 268, 308, 446, creating runs 11% better than average, striking out just 19.5% of the time, not walking quite as much as last year, making very good contact. 53-31, it's just kind of a, do I really want it spot? Maybe as a one-off, but that's a high price for a mediocre one-off. Logan O'Hoppe, hard-hitting catcher. 2 home runs, 129 plate appearances. Last year, he had the 14 and 199. Beginning of the season, end of the season with a big injury miss in the middle. Fairly priced if you're going to this team. 47.8% hard hits is nice. Nico Goodrum, Zach Neto, Kyron Paris, pretty skippable down toward the bottom of the lineup here. Nothing really. Neto's got 3 home runs. Nothing overly compelling to say. I'll pull up Kyron Paris. Little stolen base upside for Paris. Swiped 44 bags, hit 14 home runs too in Double-A ball last year. Cup of coffee in the show. He slashed 100, 200, 100 last year over 46 plate appearances. Stole 3 bases. So far this year was completely lost at Double-A. He's only 22. It's another kid who's up here. Just this team promotes kids so quickly. He's been with the organization for a while. He was playing in rookie ball at age 17 back in 2019. It's just 2023 in Double-A was definitely a good year for him. At 21, that's a super productive year. But the numbers at Double-A over 92 plate appearances this year so far were .091, 198, 130. He had a WRC plus of 8. He was striking out at a 39.1% clip in Double-A. Excuse me. He had stolen 8 bases. No home runs, though. Mixed bag as a 9-hitter from the bottom of a bad lineup is not exactly ideal. 2,000 on FanDuel is the dead min. 2,200 is the second baseman on DraftKings, shortstop on FanDuel. If you're building a ton of Angel stacks for some reason, fire away, but otherwise pretty uninteresting. I don't think I want either of these pitchers. Pretty low strikeout. If I'm picking one over the other, it's probably Soriano. Given that Stuff Plus likes him a little bit, there are some strikeouts, but too many walks. It's uncomfortably Cardinals bats as a yes, and then Angels bats if you want them for a cheap price. They're, I guess, a weird alternative value option, but I prefer Oakland. I prefer Pittsburgh. I prefer the Nationals with that big run total. 4 games to go. We're doing okay. It's only 5:05. Been going for 2+ hours, but we started early enough. Just checking out the chat. A lot of stuff going on in chat now. I love it. Keep it up. I'm not going to catch up with some of those questions. Dom asked, so you don't like Cole Tucker or Josh Lowe? I like Josh Lowe better than I like Cole Tucker. I think he's a better player. It's a limited sample so far this year, but he was terrific last year. 20 homers, 32 steals, 208 ISO, 131 WRC plus. Definitely on the board. The Rays, it's just Cutter Crawford's a good pitcher, or has been pitching well, let's say. So the Rays are a lower priority stack for me, but Josh Lowe, I think, is definitely a priority within that stack. I think at 4,200, 3,000, he's a perfectly viable one-off. So yeah, he's not off the board by a long stretch. It's just if I ranked, all the players on the slate on a 12-gamer, where would he fall rankings-wise as a one-off? I don't know. 50? There's a lot of players on the slate. Maybe higher than 50. I didn't really think about that number. Jordan Montgomery, 75-81, projects out okay. It's just another one of those days where, Monty's typically got a little bit of a capped ceiling. But there are a lot of strikeouts to be had in this Reds lineup. This is the projected version. We do have the Diamondbacks lineup. Doesn't look like we have the Reds yet. So I just always question with Montgomery what the ceiling looks like. And he's been low end so far this year in just 4 starts, 23 innings. Only 10.5% strikeouts is pretty weak. Below average by stuff plus. Hasn't really given up too much in terms of premium contact. A couple of home runs mixed in there. He gave up 2 home runs in start against the Dodgers on the 1st, and then 1 home run back in mid-April against the Giants. 2 starts with no homers allowed, but his strikeout high for the season was 4 strikeouts. That came in a 7-inning start against the Cardinals. Against these same Reds in his last start, 2 strikeouts, 2 walks, just 2 earned runs, 7 hits, worked 7 innings. That's exactly the kind of start that I could totally see for Montgomery again. I think you do have upside to 5 or 6 strikeouts maybe. He had a couple better performances for strikeout upside last year, but typically throughout his career, he's worked in the low 20s. Last year was 21.4, year before 21.8. But there's always reasonable depth. If you're just looking for clean innings, I think he's an option with a little bit of upside for strikeouts. He's fairly priced for that. This is an is who he is kind of a spot, is who he is kind of a price. Ashcraft on the other side, 18.6%, going up against a good Diamondbacks lineup. I just don't think you tangle with it. He projects out fine, 7,600, 8,500, but a low-end strikeout rate. Stuff Plus likes him a lot at 112. Over 39 2/3 in 7 starts. We have a strikeout high of 8. That was a 5 2/3 inning start against Chicago. A 6 strikeout game in the start immediately before that. Since that 8 strikeout game, we've been at 4, 3, 4, and 2 over his last 4 starts. 5 innings, gave up 5 earned on 5 hits to the Angels. Pretty rough one. 6 1/3 against Texas. Not a bad start. He only struck out 3, walked 0, gave up a home run, but that was the only run he allowed. 7 hits allowed in 6 1/3. 4 strikeouts, 2 walks, no earned runs, but 2 unearned runs on 5 hits over 6 against the Pods. And then against the same Arizona team, these are the same 2 pitchers from that game, too. They faced each other in this last one. 5 innings, 2 strikeouts, 3 walks, 3 earned on 6 hits. I would expect that kind of a performance again from Ashcraft, with the upside in the situation being firmly on the Diamondback side. If one of those pieces goes off more than it did the last time around, I fully expect it to be Diamondbacks bats. Corbin Carroll back in the leadoff spot, 201, 287, 266. Still really scuffling. Needs to turn things around. 3,000 on the FanDuel slate for a dude who hit 25 homers and stole 54 bases last year. Back in the leadoff spot, that's never not going to be interesting. That's a killer value. I would absolutely one-off Corbin Carroll here. I don't care about the current season struggles. That price is just effective enough. It's not as exaggerated at 5,000 on DraftKings, but that's cheap. 51 is very cheap for Ketel Marte. 35 is fair on FanDuel. He's at 293, 342, 543 with a 143 WRC plus and 9 home runs this season. I don't really understand why he's so cheap at a light second base spot. Barrels and premium contact are there. He's doing everything right. There's no reason he should be that cheap. This is honestly a little light. You could easily justify 38 to 4,000 for Ketel Marte against this pitcher. Jock Peterson for 43.28, pretty effective value price. He's got a 225 ISO, 4 home runs on the season, 50% hard hits with an 8.8% barrel with upside for more based on what he's done in the past. We know Jock Peterson's a good lefty power hitter, and he's doing a little bit more interesting things too this year. Christian Walker, 7 home runs on the season, a 177 ISO. We know there's power upside beyond that for him. He's very effectively priced at 47.34. Lourdes Gurriel, 4,500, 3,000. He's got 5 home runs. The triple slash has fallen off badly. It's down to an 88 WRC plus. There's still power there. There's still good contact there. Low strikeout, low walk rate means a lot of balls in play. Jhonny Suarez has come on a little bit recently. He's hit a couple home runs. He stole a base the other day, but still an 83 WRC plus and 167. Lack of premium contact is is the scary part here. This has fallen off a lot over the last couple of years. Still a good power bat lurking in there somewhere for a very cheap price, 4,290. He's not off the board at third base, but it's been kind of rough. Gabriel Moreno, 35.25, hasn't done much this year, but a lot of prospect pedigree. Had an okay year last year, 7 home runs, 284, 339, 408, a 103 WRC plus, and 380. I think he's more that hitter than this guy. Pavin Smith for 32.24. Effectively priced for a late lineup lefty bat. If you want him, you take him in, if you're building out a bunch of stacks. If you're building one, he could maybe be the 5th man into a DraftKings stack. Probably not making my top 4 on FanDuel considering the high-end bats at the top of the lineup for cheap prices. But he's playable. Kevin Newman, less playable. Not a great bat. Reds bats against Montgomery, probably, again, it's probably a situation where they're somewhat limited by his quality while he doesn't spike a monster game against them. Last time out, they did rack up 7 hits. They only struck out twice and walked twice, but only 2 earned runs on those 7 hits. Jonathan India's been pretty weak out of that leadoff spot. 2 homers, 4 steals, and 86 WRC plus. His one good season was, as we looked at the other day, kind of a while ago at this point. Capable enough on an any given slate basis. You don't leave him out of a ton of red stacks if you're building a bunch, but hasn't been great. Ellie is spectacular. 25 stolen bases, 9 home runs already, 255 ISO, 146 WRC plus. 25 stolen bases on May 13th is outrageous. Tremendous talent, 14.4% barrels, 50% hard hits. At this point, I don't really care about the strikeouts, especially if we're drawing that many walks, getting on at a 366 clip. Let him strike out 31% of the time. I'll take the 60+% that he does everything else. Spencer Steer, low strikeout, 4 home runs, 11 steals, creating runs 20% better than average. As maybe a slightly above average player in the long term. He's okay, 3,200, 5,000. Certainly playable out of the 3 spot if he's anywhere in the top 5 or 6. Tyler Stevenson, an effective catcher bat. He's got 4 home runs and 103 plate appearances, a 180 ISO, below average in terms of WRC plus, but we're really just looking for the cheap catcher home run. And that's what we get from time to time out of Stevenson. So far this year, tremendous contact profile in 103 plate appearances. Last year, 13 homers in 517. That's probably about where we total out. Fairchild Candelario. These two are the more interesting of these bottom bats. But that's really only considering current form for Will Benson. He's got 4 homers and 8 stolen bases, but only at 195, 285, 383, striking out at nearly a 40% clip. He was a lot more interesting last year at 275, 365, 498, 11 homers, 19 steals, and just 329 plate appearances. Once that switch flips for Benson, and we can't be that far away given the premium contact and a small sample of batted ball events, it's a very interesting player late in the lineup. But as I was saying, right now, Fairchild Candelario, slightly more interesting maybe, just given the higher up spots in the lineup. I could argue a good case that Will Benson should just hit there until he comes back around, especially given the contact he's making. Lefty, not great for Benson also, by the way. Candelario, switch hitter, 4 home runs on the season, 179 ISO. Coming around maybe a little bit at the plate, but we're still below average for WRC+. We're still not making great contact. They brought him here to be a reliable veteran power bat, and he's not really providing it yet, but any given slate upside for a cheap price. Luke Maley, a second catcher in this lineup, greatly prefer Stevenson if this is the version of the lineup we get. Diamondbacks are very much in play. It's not a top priority stack, but certainly playable against Ashcraft. Ashcraft for 76.85. On DraftKings, he's more playable. On FanDuel, that's an awkward price fit. Montgomery is fairly priced, but the ceiling is questionable. Reds bats, fairly priced, with one superstar caliber price in the mix, but a lot of low prices. They're definitely playable against Montgomery, but I think it's capped upside either way. So low priority there. 3 games to go. Brady Singer. The up and down mess that Stuff Plus doesn't really like, but he's performing well. He's had a couple good starts. He had just one clunker this season. Gave up 5 earned runs over 6 innings to Toronto. He's pitched into the 6th or beyond 5 times this year. Booked a handful of quality starts. Strikeout high of 10 in the first start of the year. That was over 7 innings against Minnesota. He was very, very good in that one. Then it was just kind of average. He only gave up one, then 2 earned runs, but just 4, and 5 strikeouts along the way there. It amounts to overall, though, a 25.1% strikeout rate over 45 2/3 in 8 starts. He struck out 8 against Texas 2 starts back. Just 4 over 5 1/3 against Milwaukee in his most recent start. But he's only given up 1 earned run in each of his last 3. Went 5 against Detroit, 6 against Texas, and 5 1/3 against Milwaukee. I don't know what the win upside necessarily looks like. This is another one where Vegas has the game pretty close, if I'm remembering. Not as close. They're underdogs pretty significantly. That's just because of George Kirby's quality on the other side. So I think the win, a little bit shaky. The price is an awkward fit at $9,300 for Singer on FanDuel, $88 on DraftKings. The thing is, I could definitely see a big strikeout game. I could see like a 6-inning, 10 Ks kind of a game for Singer. 7 innings if he's going well. He's not the easiest to trust in the world, but a 2.36 ERA, a 3.32 xFIP. He was good. He was bad last year, good 2 years ago. Good, I believe, the year before that, or maybe it was in 2020 was good, then 2021 was mediocre. I forget exactly how it works. But we've seen him good over extended stretches. 24.2% strikeout rate 2 years ago. He's pitching basically like this guy so far this year. Last year was rough, 18.9% strikeouts, 5.52 with a 4.28 xFIP. But given current form, given the tremendous strikeout matchup, this projected Mariners lineup, 28.2% strikeout rate this season. We've been targeting them throughout. They've been delivering big strikeout games, big pitching performances. They are very bad at sequencing and stringing together hits or stringing together rallies and getting on base in general. All they've really got right now is a little bit of power in that lineup. That could definitely ding him, but he's been decent at avoiding premium contact and power. So I think at a high-ish mid-range price, I was going to say fair, but it's maybe high-ish. He does rank out here on the board. So given the price, the effectiveness, he's below these guys. I might prefer a cheaper Sanchez. I don't know about a cheaper Eflin. Probably prefer a cheaper Eflin. A little bit more faith, but there's a higher strikeout upside here. Would probably come down to ownership between these two. I would take the lower owned between them. Like them better than all these guys. I would maybe hedge with some Mariners, but again, they've just been disappointingly bad all year. So I don't know how much I would really get invested in that spot at this point. The Mariner that I definitely want is George Kirby. 9,000, 9,400. He's the cheapest of those top-end, justifiably talented ace-caliber pitchers. 4.15 ERA, but a 3.30 xFIP. This, I think, is the real number. 25.6% strikeouts, a spectacular microscopic 2.8% walks, 1.04 whip, 10.6% swinging, lower-end CSW, but it doesn't really matter on the he's finding his strikeouts. He's not walking anybody. Stuff Plus likes him. He's above-average arsenal. Limits premium contact effectively. Like the spot for Kirby here. The Royals are good, or good enough. It's a spot where maybe you could hedge a little. They're not tremendous at drawing walks. 6.9% walk rate for the projected lineup. But they don't strike out a ton. A lot of guys outperforming previous season strikeout rates. But even last year, it was just 21.6. It's not crazy high like the Mariners on the other side. I just think Kirby is effective enough, a good enough pitcher, that he outperforms them more often than not. That said, last time out against Minnesota at Minnesota, it struck out just 4, walked 1, gave up 3 home runs, which is uncharacteristic. 4 earned runs for the game. Lasted just 5 innings. Before that, went 6 against Houston, struck out just 3, walked 0, but only 1 earned run on 4 hits. 7 innings against Arizona, he struck out 12. No earned runs on 2 hits, walked just 1. 7 strikeouts, 6 strikeouts the 2 games before that. Reasonable ability to pitch deep into games now that he's stretched out. I like the option, and I like where he's priced compared to the guys around him on the slate. Between the 2 teams, I would probably prefer, I guess, call it a tie. I think you should probably hedge if you took a gigantic Kirby position, you'd probably hedge with some Royals bats. They're good enough to do that. You get a very, very talented Bobby Witt, 305, 372, 524 with a 220 ISO. He's got 5 homers, 15 steals, creating runs, 47% better than average. Combine him with Michael Garcia, who's back down to a 290 on base, but they keep on rolling him out in the leadoff spot. Vinny Pasquantino definitely has been interesting. 5 home runs, a 197 ISO, creating runs 14% better than average. We've highlighted Vinny a bunch of times. I'm sure you guys know, but for the guys who haven't been here before, very low strikeout, tons and tons of contact, and makes very good contact. These numbers plus these numbers should equal more production in the long term, and that's already started to trend upward. The average has spiked by a few points recently, hit a handful of home runs recently. So we're trending upward for Vinny Pasquantino with good reason to believe that it's real. 51-34 for Sal is pretty cheap. 8 home runs on the season, 226 ISO, 329, 388, 555 with a 161 WRC plus. Premium cleanup bat from the catcher spot. You get catcher and first base on him on both sides, although, again, on FanDuel, that's totally irrelevant to add the first base eligibility. Who cares? They're the same position on FanDuel. Why bother? It's just dumb. That's critical on DraftKings, though, so that you can get him and Pasquantino in the same lineup. Or, excuse me, he should be a catcher. It's, I guess, if you had Freddie Fermin in the lineup as well, it would be critical. Then you could get both of them. But obviously, Pasquantino and Sal fit together even if he wasn't a first baseman. Mike Massey, second base, a little bit effective. 3 home runs, a 174 ISO, just an 80 WRC plus. Made decent contact last year. Frisky lefty bat at second base, and he's cheap enough if you're stacking this team. Hunter Renfroe, MJ Melendez, Nelson Velasquez. We'll see what we get at the bottom of the lineup. They've rolled Daron Blanco out there a few times. He's a super interesting option for stolen base upside. All of these guys have been inconsistent deliverers of power, of production. 36, 71, 81 WRC plus marks, and then Kyle Isbell at the bottom at just 63. It's been weak. It's been hurting the team's ability to sequence, create big rallies and bigger run totals, but they're frisky enough. I love the premium contact. I'll never give up on MJ Melendez. I believe that he should be a better hitter. Nelson Velasquez has tons and tons of power, just hasn't delivered this year. So mix and match parts from the bottom of the lineup at least. If you choose to stack up Mariners against Singer, I would focus probably on Julio Rodriguez, who we know will probably come around at some point. Slow start to the season, but a good player. Still hitting the ball very hard, 52.3% hard hits. Cal Raleigh's been tremendous, 19.2%, barrels 58.9% hard hits, 10 home runs. Still pretty effectively priced at $4,100 as a catcher on DraftKings where you have to play him. Not bad as a one-off option. 7.25 in the home run model. Could maybe be a little higher against Singer. Mitch Garver as a second catcher. Obviously, you're positionally blocked if this is the lineup there, but you can play them together here. No real need to play Ty France over the 2 catchers. So if you're going to this lineup on FanDuel, you can go catcher first base and then util, and then go, Julio and then either of these guys as your stack. Jorge Polanco at 35-28. He's got 5 home runs on the season, but you can see the inconsistency. The average batting average for this team, including the 347 that Josh Rojas is hitting, is 231. The average on base is 308. If we took out the 411, it would be 296, and the average would be 217. So Rojas is keeping their numbers a little higher than they should be. He's been great. Over 114 plate appearances. His credit runs 70% better than average. 3 home runs, 4 steals, 347, 411, 515. He's been their most effective bat in terms of reliability. It's just, I don't think he's really that guy. We've never seen that before from Josh Rojas. Mitch Haniger does have power, does have premium contact. 5 home runs, 203, 265, 348 though. Ouch. Ty France, kind of weak, contact-oriented hitter. Does have a 44.9% hard hit. 2 home runs, but not getting on base enough, not hitting for average, not driving the ball enough with a .091 ISO. Luke Raley, interesting left-handed pop. 1 home run in 80 plate appearances, just a .093 ISO. I do believe there's a little bit more power than that there. Dylan Moore is an afterthought at the end of the lineup. He's been somewhat productive. He does have 4 position eligibility for 29 on FanDuel. At shortstop on DraftKings, you can do better. Singer's a yes. The price is a little bit high, but the strikeout upside is real. He projects out good. He projects out well. George Kirby is a better pitcher in a better spot. He's facing the better of these two teams, but he's easily good enough to beat this team and have a successful start here. And I think compared to where the other guys are priced and where he's projected, I like the option for a little bit of savings. Probably going to make him pretty popular, though. And then bats, more as a hedge on either side. No real prioritization of either of those teams. The Rockies, the Padres, 2 games to go. Colin, that's not a bad game stack. Is Houston, Oakland a good game stack? If you're looking for a game stack, it's not bad. Typically, I'm looking for game stacks on smaller slates, but it doesn't really matter. You just got to have faith that Oakland can come through against Arrighetti, who hasn't been overly good. But bear in mind, you're taking a team with just a 3.93 implied total. You do have the highest total on the slate on the other side of that, though. Both teams showing power, and there's enough reason to believe that the A's can get to Arrighetti. So I like this low-end, low total spot. And these totals are partly just low below 4 runs because these teams have been bad. But I like the Athletics as a value team, and I like the Pirates as a value team. These other ones in the low 3s are no's. Going back to this game that we're on right now, Randy Vasquez, in 3 starts, 12 innings, he's got a 20.4% strikeout. Stuff Plus has graded his arsenal out pretty effectively so far, but it's a very small sample. He struck out 6 in just 4 1/3 against the Cubs in his most recent outing, faced 17 hitters, gave up a home run in each of his 3 starts so far. The second start was just 2 2/3. He gave up 4 earned runs on 6 hits, struck out only 2, walked 2, gave up the homer. The first start of the year, back on April 20th against Toronto, he went 5, struck out 3, walked 1, gave up a homer, but that was the only earned run on 4 hits. Against the worst lineup in baseball, Rockies against a righty on the road, fire away, 6,000, 7,000. I don't know that we get a tremendous amount of upside beyond this, medium projection, but that's good enough for government work from the middle of the board for those prices. Really on either site, I don't know how many times we get to the quality start, even if he's going well. I don't know that we get the 6th inning out of Vasquez, considering he hasn't done it in his 3 starts. But there's potential for it, and at this price, there's probably enough room for success as long as they get him the win bonus if he only goes 5, even on FanDuel. So he's firmly on the value board. Bargain bin type pitcher, but definitely on that board. Last year in 37 2/3, 5 starts, 19.9% Ks, 2.87 ERA, but a much worse xFIP. Gave up a little bit of power. It was a bad lineup, though. Dakota Hudson, basically all he does is keep the ball down somewhat effectively and sometimes limit home runs. I think we got burnt over-exaggerating that the last time around. You can see the impact in the home run model, though. Only Fernando Tatis at a even reasonable home run total, home run projection at 6.57. Looking for 10 is the magic number for those unfamiliar. He's got 8 homers on the season. You've got 7 out of Jake Cronenworth, 5 out of Manny Machado, and 6 from Jurickson Profar in the heart of the lineup so far. But each of those guys a little bit below where they normally would be, given that Hudson keeps the ball at a 6.5 degree average launch this year, 4.6 degrees last year, and 81 1/3, 6.3 degrees the year before. His only problem is he's a terrible pitcher other than that. Doesn't strike anybody out, walks too many, gives up a bunch of runs, doesn't find any swinging strikes. He's a mess. So you can absolutely fire away with Padres bats. Good day to book 4 hits from Luis Arias against this pitcher. 4,500, 2,900. He's very cheap for his talent. 308, 354, 379. He's the best correlated scoring option in all of baseball. Terrific spot ahead of Fernando Tatis. Hasn't been priced back up yet. 54.38 for Tatis, a little bit cheap. He's been scuffling, he's been up and down, but the premium contact is still very much alive. Doing better for premium contact so far this year. Love the option. Jake Cronenworth at 46,300, not priced up for a very productive start over 172 plate appearances. 10.9% barrels, nearly 40% hard hits, 285, 349, 503 at 219 ISO, 7 home runs. It's been great. I was way wrong about Jake Cronenworth. One of my bigger misses at the very beginning of the season. Day one, I was like, I don't think he's going to hold down that 3 spot. He's been doing great. Machado at 49.31. That's aggressively low for this player. 133 ISO, 90 WRC plus. I get why he's cheap, but we're not far off in terms of premium contact. Hard hits are up. Barrels are up. Some bad luck mixed in there. Some happenstance. It's a very, very good hitter. He's not done. In no way do I think Manny Machado is done being a terrific hitter. Profar 41.33. I still don't really believe, but he's been pulling it off. I think this has dipped a little bit recently. But 6 home runs, 2 steals, creating runs 63% better than average. It's far from irrelevant so far, as Will Smith said. Bogarts, 211, 264, 301, yet to make the turn for the season. I still think it's coming, but it's getting a little bit late. Or it's getting late early for him, let's say. Merrill at 36-26, playable part from the bottom of the lineup. 6 stolen bases, 2 home runs. You get 8 stolen bases and 5 home runs out of Ha-Seong Kim, who's been kind of messy. He's also banged up. I think he might sit. He got, He got hit on the wrist. And last I saw, he was questionable for this. So you're like, not NBA style questionable, but like probably going to be out a few days. So he might not even be at the bottom of the lineup. Campusano, a playable enough catcher if you're building a bunch of Padres stacks. Probably not a priority one-off, even at 37, just given the spot in the lineup. If you choose to roster Rockies, they're very bad. The run total is at like 3.2. It's a pitcher's park. There's really no good reason to, outside of just wildly contrarian options. You get Ryan McMahon and not much else. Hunter Goodman is maybe interesting for power upside if he's in the lineup, but it's a bad park for power. Brenton Doyle's been productive, but not like overly so. Totally skippable. I mean, if you're building stacks, he's definitely a priority, but this team as a whole is totally skippable. Blackman from the leadoff spot has an 84 WRC plus. Tovar, after a hot start, is down to an 89, 4 home runs, 3 steals, looking more like the guy from last year again. McMahon's been easily their best player, but he's only got 5 home runs. It's not like we're talking about a powerhouse team here. 128 WRC plus, an effective triple slash. Elias Diaz is an interesting catcher, 4,300. I wouldn't prioritize the one-off, though, not in this ballpark, in this lineup. It just seems a little bit weak. He's maybe in the mix for a few shares. If you choose, let's say you're going to build 150 lineups and you want a one-off catcher in every single one of them for some reason. 10 of them, something like that. Probably not even 15. You could argue for 15, I guess. Give him 10%, but it seems a little bit thin. It's just, if you're looking for that catcher one-offs for a cheap price, we're always going to be looking for those catchers who hit in the top half of the lineup because you just get the plate appearance bonuses. Brendan Rodgers has been bad. Sean Bouchard is playable enough. The on-base is okay. He was good in 43 plate appearances last year. Good in 97 plate appearances the year before. Taking a bit of a dip so far in 60 plate appearances this year, but there's talent there. Jordan Beck is another high-end prospect for them, but high-end in the Rockies organization. Pretty skippable team. So Randy Vasquez for value, pretty big yes. Dakota Hudson, pretty big no. Padres bats, middle of the board, they're a yes, but limited and maybe limited for home run upside. And then the Rockies are a pretty hard no. Last game, gang. 534. Jordan Hicks is another one of those guys. Limits home runs in the sample that we have over the last 3 seasons. Last year was entirely in relief, 65 2/3 innings. Gave up just a 1.40% home run rate on a negative 0.1 degree average launch, 5.4% barrels. Very good at limiting hard hits and exit velo. Year before, same results in terms of hard hits and exit velo. Just a 1.90% home run rate, 7% barrels, a 1.4 degree average launch. That was in a hybrid role, 61 1/3, 8 starts in there, struck out 24%, was up 28.4% as a reliever last year. Walked too many both seasons. Not a super high-end pitcher. This year, outside of limiting power upside, I don't know how much I would consider him even as a value against the Dodgers lineup here. Stuff Plus loves the arsenal. That's what I struggle a little bit with. But the results haven't really been strong so far this season. 20% strikeouts, 9.7% swinging strikes. I think this just is kind of indicative of the fact that maybe he's just a better pitcher when he can go all out in a relief role. Like even with the 11.2% walks, these results are very, very good. So just he maybe just makes more sense as a reliever. 7,800, 8,000. The price is fine, but he's going up against the Dodgers. It's just one of those why would you want two spots? But the reason I highlighted the launch angle and everything is to explain why the Dodgers home run marks are so low. They still rank out as the top overall stack option on the board because it's impossible to suppress the upside in the projections for those 6 hitters. Outside of facing, the aces of the world, which Jordan Hicks is certainly not, the Dodgers are always going to be one of the top ranked stacks, even when their power is potentially clipped a little. If any team in the world can hit some home runs against this guy, this is probably the team to do it. 11 home runs on the season for Ohtani, 6 for Mookie. You've got 11 home runs later in the lineup from Teoscar Hernandez, who's having an underappreciated season. In 175 plate appearances, you got 11 homers, a 245 ISO, a 132 WRC plus. You get Max Muncy right above him at a 273 ISO, 137 WRC plus. Not far behind with 9 home runs. Tons of premium contact out of those two guys. You just get a lot of strikeouts with them. There are nights where if you have them together in a lineup, they'll put some zeros in there. But there are also nights where they'll put some monster scores in there. They're a little bit cheaper than the 4 superstars at the top of the lineup. Yes, I include Will Smith. 136 WRC plus, 4 home runs, 306, 370, 470 from a catcher who hits cleanup every day of the week. Strikes out at a 16.2% clip, draws walks, hits the ball very hard. Will Smith is tremendous at catcher. Freeman, Ohtani, and Betts, wherever you can get them, however you can get them, they're just very expensive, but they're all absolutely fantastic on any given slate. Andy Pages, off to a killer start. 287, 330, 483, 4 home runs, 195 ISO, creating runs 30% better than average. Outman and Lux have been off to bad starts. Sub Mendoza, weak WRC plus numbers, but 2 talented kids from the left side of the plate who I do think are going to turn things around. So even these guys, I think it's a 9-man lineup. On the other side, Yamamoto making the start, not Gavin Stone, fortunately. 10-5, 10-6, top of the board projection-wise, looks like a dominant option. 101.84 by Stuff Plus for the full arsenal. I expect that'll go up as he continues to round into form at the major league level. 279, 292 ERA to XFIP is right in line. Just a 4.7% walk rate, a 12.8% swinging strike rate with a 32.7% CSW. He's been tremendous. He's pitching deeper into games. He's gone upward as things have gone on. 5 strikeouts in each of his last 2 games. He gave up 2 earned runs on 5 hits in the most recent outing. That was the first time in 3 starts he gave up any earned runs. He gave up exactly 3 earned runs in the 2 starts that came in the middle there. Had 2 starts before those 2 where he gave up no earned runs. And then just the one messy start in South Korea, went just 1 inning, first start of the year, first start in the majors, was still a spring training date, March 21st. Struck out just 2, walked 1, gave up 5 earned on 9 hits, went just 1 inning. That's still messing with, as good as his ERA is, that still messes with your ERA a little bit. This should actually be even lower. And I'm looking at the wrong one. This one should be even lower. But just a tremendous pitcher. I really like the spot against the Giants lineup that's got plenty of strikeouts for him. They're at just a, 3.2 implied total. Looks like a killer option on this slate. He's just super expensive. He's a little bit difficult to reach, but with some of those value stacks in play, maybe you can't get like Dodgers, Yamamoto, Pirates, or A's or whatever. But if you went a little bit cheaper for your high end stack, I'm pretty sure you could get like Pirates or A's with, let's say the Cardinals, as painful as that is. I think you can get to builds like that with Yamamoto and then another good pitcher on DraftKings or just Yamamoto on FanDuel. So I think he's easily in play, even with the high price. I don't really feel the need to stack up Giants. I don't really feel the need to hedge against Yamamoto. If I did, it would be Lamont Wade to start things off. 480 on base. He's been spectacular. 340, 480, 457. Just 2 home runs. The power's down a little bit, but the premium contact is right in line with what he did last year. Walking at a 20.3% rate, you're just facing a pitcher that doesn't really walk anybody. Thairo Estrada, 41.27. Totally playable if you're building giant stacks, and I'm sure they'll be super contrarian tonight. It's just, I don't know where the quality really comes from. 6 home runs is the team leader right now for this version of the lineup anyway. You get Matt Chapman with 5 home runs and a weird 3 stolen bases, but otherwise kind of limited. You get Mike Yastrzemski, 3 home runs, 132 ISO from him. The power's been out a little bit for him. Both of those guys still making good contact, but not great contact. Wilmer, his contact has dipped fairly significantly. He's got 1 home run in 120 plate appearances, 210, 283, 295, just a 69 WRC plus. I do believe Wilmer Flores is a better player than that. He doesn't strike out that much. Put the ball in play, we'll see what happens, but not a priority spot for a Wilmer play. Elliot Ramos, a high-end prospect for them over the past couple of seasons. Very cheap in the heart of the lineup, was off to a good start in AAA. They called him up over 18 plate appearances, 294, 333, 353, creating runs a little bit, but again, bad spot. Blake Sable, Casey Schmidt, and Brett Wisely, pretty skippable against Yoshinobu Yamamoto. That's it. That's the slate. So Yamamoto is a gigantic yes. Top priority pitcher on the entire slate. If you can't afford him, there's other good options, though. Hicks, kind of a no, but maybe does weird things to limit the Dodgers' power. That said, still like the Dodgers for a bunch of runs scored, and they probably chase him after 5 and then get into the bullpen. Like the Dodgers quite a bit. Giants, pretty much a no against Yamamoto's upside. To summarize, thank you guys for all the likes, the subscriptions, and so on and so forth. I appreciate you too, Trey. To summarize this one real quick again, very top of the board, Yamamoto for a high price. Love it. Great option. George Kirby, if you can't afford Yamamoto, if you can't afford Imanaga, a little bit more expensive than Kirby, but less than Yamamoto, Kirby's your guy. It's a good Royals lineup, but Imanaga's facing a better Braves lineup. Yamamoto's got the best matchup between the 3 against San Francisco, but very expensive. Ronaldo against the Cubs. I like that Cubs lineup a lot, but I think he's talented enough to get through it. He's been pitching very, very well. I just do think there's some indicators in there that he's pitching a little bit above his head so far, but no real reason to believe that just comes to a crashing halt other than the Cubs have a little bit of power, a lot of speed, and very good on-base skills. Brady Singer, ton of strikeout upside against the Mariners, has been good this season, just still difficult to fully trust, but he's easily on the board. That is a very playable spot at 93.88, especially on DraftKings. Eflin against the Red Sox, especially on DraftKings at 82, firmly in that mid-range mix. Again, this is a solid mix of options right there. If you don't want to go to these guys, I wouldn't do it across 150, but if you're like, I'm just going to build 5 lineups and I only want good bats in them, so I'm going to go to some value pitching, that is an average of 77.50 across those starters with a lot of talent there. Manaea is probably the lowest end out of those guys against Philly. I like Chris Sanchez against the Mets. Nobody's talking to you, Alexa.
Please try a little later.
It's the second time this show. I think it's when I say this guy's name for whatever reason. Eflin, Sanchez. Bybee against Texas is a difficult opponent, but he's got enough talent at that price. Vasquez is a terrific value option against Colorado on the road. Just give me 5. Give me 5 good innings at 7,000, 6,000. I'll win it with bats. Cutter Crawford, definitely playable. 96 is an awkward price fit on FanDuel. 86 is a little bit better on DraftKings. He's probably in that mid-range too. Mitch Keller, just from this part of the board at 9,000, 9,200, a little bit awkward of a price fit. Liberator, it's a very good matchup, but I question that's the one I was going to lower his innings, right? I think. I got to double check that. I'm pretty sure that was where I was going to. I think this is the projection that was a little bit too high. Pitched just 3 days ago, faced 4 hitters in relief. Going to cut that down to like 3 innings. Jordan Montgomery, better real life pitcher. Solid from the mid-range, but a question what the ceiling looks like. Williams, maybe a little bit juicy. 7,300, he'd be in the value mix on DraftKings given the matchup against the White Sox. It's just you're not dealing with an overly high-end pitcher. 8,700 is just too expensive on FanDuel. Ashcraft, I don't love the matchup for him. 85.76. a couple of shares here and there across 150 are fine, but very low priority. Colin Ray, I'm targeting Pittsburgh bats on the other side, even with the 3.9 implied total. Just not that good. But again, I wouldn't call you completely out of your mind if you took a few shares of Colin Ray at a very low price. He's succeeded enough times, and he's going up against a low-end enough lineup. It's just all those lefties with some power in that lineup. I think they get him. Arrighetti against Oakland, it's kind of similar. Oakland's got enough quality. They're showing enough against a pitcher who hasn't been very good, but he does have that weird strikeout upside that we've seen in short starts. So he's not off the board for 73-72. It's a deep slate for value. Jose Soriano against the Cards, they're showing a ton of upside against him. I don't really trust them. They've been bad, so if you wanted to call him a value dart at 74-65, probably not crazy. Hicks is a no for me against the Dodgers. Lorenzen against Cleveland, Flexen, Stripling, and Hudson. All these guys are kind of no's. But as in terms of the value bin, I think you could go that deep. This is like a cut line down here today. These guys are all just dart throw caliber options, but they're very cheap. You nail the right one, and that does a lot of work for you. It's just you do have Vasquez up here at 6. You've got Minaya at 72. You've got Sanchez at 79. You don't have to go to this level, but there's a lot of options if you choose to. Home run board, and then we're out of here. Jordan Alvarez, top of the board. We've got several Astros hitters, including the key bats, in the top of the board here. You got some Pirates, including the home run pick of the day, O'Neal Cruz. Jack Sawinski, another big lefty power bat who's been scuffling. Brian Reynolds, switch hitter, going to get him from the left side of the plate. Rowdy Tellez, just below the magic number. Another big lefty hitter. Very, very cheap. There is upside in those Pittsburgh lefties. I feel it. Probably shouldn't go by feel. The model's showing it again. Damn it. I gotta stop saying shit like I feel it, because then I gotta go back and show it in the numbers just to make myself feel better. A lot of good home run marks, some decent power, and again, Colin Ray really struggles against lefties. It's justifiable. I feel it, and it's justifiable. Pete Alonso, the outlier from the Mets lineup. Don't really love that stack. Brent Rooker, justifying some of the options for the A's. You get Rooker here above the magic number, but you also get down here Seth Brown and Shea Langoliers, not that far behind. Again, justifiable value stack from the A's today. The Cards are showing some power. They're showing some projections at the top of the lineup. It's just they've been uncomfortably bad. Rafael Devers is a spectacular one-off on DraftKings at third base. His price is too low. Bryce Harper, lefty, is never going to be all that far off the mark. Still, kind of expensive. Chris Morel showing some power from the Cubs. Where are the other Cubs? You get Seiya down there. You get Cody Bellinger there. Not bad options. A little bit of power showing for the White Sox as well. That was another just weird, potential value play. I completely forget who they're playing. Nationals? Yes. Good job. So it's against Trevor Williams. That's where some of the power upside is coming from. He hasn't given up a home run yet this year, though. It's one of the worst lineups in baseball. Probably going to be fairly contrarian, but the Nats are the better of those two value teams going up against Chris Flexen. With that in mind, guys, that's it. I got to get out of here. 5:49. We've been talking for way too long. Got to get the projections updated up on the website. Check out rotoscouts.com for all your free projections. Pop into our Discord if you're new here. Some of the new guys in the chat. Let me know if you need the link. But hop into the Discord. A lot of good stuff going on over there. Check out acemind.io for all your optimizer and sim needs. Promo code rotoscouts, all in caps. 20% off your first month. Good luck out there tonight. Somebody go win something. We'll see you guys tomorrow.